1, 2, 3.
Hello, friend. The Mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from our secret ice fortress and laboratory high in the Swiss Alps. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. Keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground as Sumo and Smokestack direct your attention to a higher dimension. Are you ready? Stand by.
Since they started in with the talkies, you can't get a moment's peace. But they're talking just to hear their own voices. Well, at least that's what it seems like. 'Cause there's nothing that I've heard bears repeating. Won't you come back to the movies, Buster Keaton? Well, it barely took a decade for those negatives to decay. But what the hell, man, there was nitrate in the film stock from those days. I guess that's the problem. But I'm not tired enough to admit I've been beaten. So won't you come back to the movies, Buster Keaton? I wish that I was Buster Keaton when they took it all away, getting drunk every night on Irish whiskey. Or maybe Fatty Arbuckle when the headlines finally declared, well, I guess it's just a mystery. But I'm not gonna be like Charlie Chaplin, jumping on the first boat I see and sail away before they have a chance to miss me. No, I'm staying here in New York City, and I don't care how bad it gets. Well, they keep on making pictures, but they're worthless and they're sad, and they never will make up for the silence that we had. But now we're stuck with it, and the kids are watching TV while they're eating. Won't you come back to the movies, Buster Keaton? Good morning.
Settle down now. Settle down.
How did I sound? I couldn't tell because I have such feedback in my microphone.
I can't tell either because I haven't heard your local recording yet.
Well, that doesn't
We're just
help.
flying blind here, dude.
We're always flying blind. This is the... we're not flying blind. We're always guided by Thoth or whoever the evil spirit is.
What? That took a weird turn.
Well, I've been thinking about. I spent the week in San Francisco. Oh, that explains it. Which is always a thing. Yeah. I had a lot of thoughts. First of all, I met up with. I had a meetup with a real life internet friend. No kidding. There, I did a thing that we normally don't do, which is that you meet people that you have been friends with online for years. Yeah, it sounds risky. Well, it wasn't as risky for me as it was for him, I feel. I met... Yeah, probably true. Are you familiar with Changlican? Who? Liu Yi, or Liu, rather. No, I don't think I know who you're talking about. He's a good poster. And he has been my internet friend for ages, right? Mm-hmm. And so I made the comment that I was going to retake the Bay Area, which I did to some degree. Sweet. I feel. And he said, I'm also in the Bay Area now, which I was unbeknownst to me because he had been formerly in Virginia. Mm-hmm. In what the locals like to call Nova. Are you familiar with Nova? Oh, yes. Yeah. Northern Virginia. Yeah, suburb Nova. Of Mordor. Yeah. Yeah, Liu Yi. So he moved there recently for a job. And so I said, oh, looky there. So I drove out to see him in my rental car in the middle of the night. Mm-hmm. I got there and I made the post, and it was like 8 in the p.m. And he was like, come hang out. And so I did. And he gave me this address. And I got there and it was this abandoned church, right? Are you kidding me? Well, I mean, it wasn't abandoned. There was just no one there. Oh, that's different. Yeah. And then there's a car sitting there, and I pull up, and he instantly jumps out of the car, and without any greeting, just jumps into the passenger seat of mine. Just like, as though he was just wanting to be abducted. Yeah. Some people are easy to kidnap. Yeah, he would have been very easy to kidnap, and he looked at me and he goes, with a very deep Chinese voice, he says, hello. Nice to meet you. Let's go. And then we're going to go eat whatever the funny Chinese word he said was. Yeah. And so we did, and he was exactly like, and I don't know if it's better or worse that he was exactly like he was online. I don't know what that says about us. Mm-hmm. I think we'd like to think that we're different than we are online. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe we think we're better. Maybe we think we're worse. He was the same, which was good. Am I in person like I'm like online? You're very similar. I think that's probably true for most people. I think it's true for you too. You think so? Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. Maybe. And so anyway, we had a long discussion. It was a nice evening. He gave a very eloquent and fancy prayer at dinner in the Chinese restaurant. Awesome. Where he lifted his hands up and stuff. Yeah, dude. In the sky, which is impressive. And then he told me about all of his stories of his father being in Hong Kong when the British gave it to China, and his dad being against the CCP, and then something about working here as a spy. I don't think you should. And all these fun things. You shouldn't out him. Well, I think it's over now. I think it's over. I think any retribution that would have happened is done. You're not worried that you're gonna get him kidnapped and put in a concentration camp? No, I don't think so. Well, because he is actually not his father, and he's more okay with the CCP. Okay, gotcha. Himself. And this is a cause of contention between him and his father. Oh, I see. His father being like, no, CCP bad, and Cheng Liken being like, CCP not the best, but is it so bad? Okay. Right? Mm-hmm. And anyway, so that was fun. And then I did some other stuff. I went to Muir Woods, as you do. Oh, beautiful. Hiked around. Did some hiking. I always hike shirtless, which was... Naturally. I was the only one there doing that. Which is surprising, because Californians used to go with less clothes than they do now. Mm-hmm. And I think the whole problem with California, I think I figured it out. They're doing the wrong drugs. Right?
Many such cases.
So in like the 70s and 60s and 80s, they were doing different drugs. A lot of psychedelics with a little bit of cocaine, right? And now, like so many places in the world, it's become fentanyl and methamphetamines.
Oh, no. You hate to see it.
Which is why the homeless is there. Like, people that are on acid don't become homeless. Right? You need fentanyl for that. Or heroin.
People on acid, like, invent the internet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a portal to communicate with demons so that you can get technology. Right? Which is how it happens. Which, we can debate whether or not that's good. But it has some interesting... we're talking on it now. So, whatever. But they used to do that, and then people like Zuckerberg or whatever started talking about microdosing psilocybin, and it became like a thing that like tech people did. Like it was always a thing tech people did, but it was a thing like the entrepreneurs of the tech scene did. Like the low-level coders didn't do that. They had the good sense to be standard nerds, right?
Yeah.
But now people are like going like, oh man, I went on my ayahuasca retreat and I really connected with the universe. And it showed me how to like better synthesize our 5th level management meetings.
I don't get why Silicon Valley people are talking about microdosing psilocybin when the thing that made Silicon Valley great was macrodosing psilocybin.
Macrodosing, that's right. Make California great again by macrodosing. Microdosing isn't going to get you anywhere. It just makes you annoying. And like really it does, because it serves as like this. It puts this spiritual gloss on like the most annoying, bureaucratic, tech capital thing.
Yeah, I guess if you're in HR and you're weeding out, people that don't have enough diversity points or something, but if you do it while it's just slightly affected by psychedelics, you feel like you're doing something, spiritual and powerful.
Well, yeah, like Foursquare was never a thing of spiritual transformation.
No.
Right?
No.
You remember that?
Yeah.
But yet, on enough ayahuasca, one can fool themselves that their thing to sell users data for advertisements for Soylent or whatever is somehow a spiritual endeavor.
Changing the world, man.
Right. And they're not. They're just inventing the worst ways to advertise things that have ever humanly been achieved.
So true.
That's all they're doing, is they're inventing the world's greatest advertising machinery that's ever happened. And yet ayahuasca allows them to feel like they're doing something more than that.
Yeah.
Which is why it's annoying. They need to be macrodosing. I want all of my tech bros to be out in the middle of the desert with a bunch of Indians in a teepee just skyrocketing on peyote.
I mean, go hard or go home, guys.
Exactly. The alternative is that you get all the homeless in the tents, which I did see a bit about that. There were parts of San Francisco that were completely unaffected. I haven't been there in a while, There were parts that were still just fine, but there were definitely parts that were like more homeless here than I remember. They didn't bother me that much, but I got in the elevator with a guy, and he said at the hotel, and he said, "This is a hotel in a demilitarized zone." And I said, "That seems a bit extreme." He says, "I was accosted twice just walking outside." I was not accosted at all. I don't know if I'm bigger and more intimidating, maybe.
Well, you look like one of them.
I do. That's the thing. I can easily pull off a homeless look.
Yeah.
And probably could talk crazier than them too.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what it was. I did meet Boomhauer there from King of the Hill.
Like dang man, that guy?
Yeah, I was walking past him and I was in line for something. And he said, "Oh man, Dick, I saw them there with you and the crocodile and I said, "Yeah, well, people do that." Because that's just what you respond to. That's
Right.
my standard response to insane talk.
Yep.
I say, yeah, well, people do that. And and I was out, and it got, after a while, I realized, after like the 5th paragraph, this man, I realized that he thought, for some reason, that I was Steve Irwin. Like,
Okay.
I don't know if
you
didn't
don't
know
look
that he
like
was dead.
Steve Irwin at all.
I don't look anything like Steve Irwin, right? Not even a little bit. And Steve Irwin's been dead for like 20 years.
Also true.
And was in Australia.
Yeah.
Many things of this man's thought process did not work. And yet, he at some point in the middle of his ramblings, he goes something like, "Hey, yo, man, I'm so glad you got better of that stingray, man. I'm so glad you got better about her." Right? Like, so glad you got better from that stingray. And this is what happens when you're doing the wrong drugs.
At least he was nice.
He was a very nice man. I think he may have thought everyone was Steve Irwin. I'm not sure. So that's how we would fix California, is we have to get them on the correct drugs again. Because here's the black pill. Here's the real black pill.
Uh-oh.
People don't want to hear it. The culture has stopped largely because the boomers have retired or dying off. They're the only ones that did anything interesting.
I don't buy this.
They had the Woodstock. I mean, think about, someone pointed this out to me in the way you point things out now, which is with a cartoon. And they had a boomer there with a big chalkboard of all the things that had been invented under the boomers. He was like VCR, internet, LSD, all these, just this entire thing, like microwaves.
All those things are crap, though.
But then he goes over to the millennial, and he's sitting there like, female on male spousal abuse. Like, that's the idea they came up with. Right, that's it. Like, and it's the point. Like, what have they come up with? What have we come up with?
I mean,
since the boomers, really?
That is a valid criticism of millennials.
Yeah. What have we come up with? Not much. I mean, I feel like on this show, me and you have come up with some things.
True.
We're participants in the grand debate of ideas. You know, there's like Kant and Hegel and us.
Yeah.
And Cardi B. And we're all around the table discussing all the great ideas. We're in part of the great discussion.
Right, but nobody thinks of themselves as being part of a generation. It's just everybody else.
Well, yeah, that's true.
I mean, I don't think of myself. Millennials don't get credit for my good ideas. Just saying. I'm taking all. Well,
I think they're going to take it in the future anyway, though.
Maybe.
In the future anyway, they're going to try to take credit for it. But I mean, Steve Jobs, boomer. You know.
Yeah.
Other Steve, who was Apple. Wozniak, boomer. The more interesting of the Steves, honestly.
Oh, sure, so true. Yeah.
Bill Gates, boomer. All of both the great evils and they're all the boomers and all the good people. So, since Woodstock has been dying away in that generation, we have had no new culture. It's just classic rock over and over and over again. And I don't know what to do about that, but it is a bit of a black pill. It's a bit of a black pill, but I'm going to throw something out there today.
Woo!
I don't know if people are ready for. Well, first of all, later in this episode, we have an interview with Godward.
All right,
which is good. He can actually he more or less interviewed me.
Also good.
We're gonna have that later. That's nice. He runs a podcast. Great guy. Still doesn't give money.
Yeah.
To the show.
He's
but it's okay.
Solid dude nonetheless.
Solid dude nonetheless. Even though he likes Moby Dick, which is fine,
he can be forgiven.
It's objectively the most boring book that's ever been written. Like, here's page 10 on the way the floor creaks. Okay. Can we get to the whale or something, you know? Anywho, but so we've got that coming up. So if what I'm about to say doesn't quite float your bubble, or you reject it as being too crazy, but listen, what Yeah, okay, here, I'm going to sing a little song. Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world. Are you familiar with this song?
Yes.
Red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in it. Now, why would they say red and yellow, black and white?
To make all the different races feel included in Jesus' love.
Well, yes, this is going to be an episode where I have a lot of phlegm in the microphone.
That's all our episodes, dude.
It's good for radio. It is good, but why? But here's the thing: like, Chinese people aren't yellow. Like, black people are sort of darkish, the most dark of them, and the most pale white people are sort of whitish.
Yeah,
but like, there's no Chinese people where I'm like yellow.
Yeah,
like yellow is a pretty intense color. Like, that's the Simpsons are yellow. The Chinese people aren't the Simpsons color.
Okay.
And then the Native Americans aren't red.
No. Like,
red is not... Like, that's not a color of human skin.
No. Yeah,
They're
I mean,
like
okay. I see what you're saying.
Right?
I mean, they may just be trying to give everybody a helpful name for the different sorts of peoples, however you want to define them. Thank you. That was so nice. It's good radio.
Yeah. So here's the thing. They did that because, well, you know what the four alchemical stages are?
Oh, no.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no.
Black, yellow, red, and white. Red and yellow, black and white. See, and this is...
I don't think that song is about alchemy. I
don't know if that song's about alchemy, but the choice of the racial colors was definitely alchemical.
Oh, okay. I gotcha.
Way back upon when...
So the song, you were just introducing the segment with the song.
Right, correct.
Okay, I track now. It's a nighttime show. I'm a little sluggish in the brain.
That's okay.
Yeah.
This is why the Bikini Atoll doesn't... This is why it's not actually radioactive. And...
what?
Why Mary Curie is an alchemical construct.
Are you going to explain all this?
Yeah.
Great.
So, first of all, Mary Curie is fake.
Who give us some background on Mary Curie, please?
Mary Curie is an alchemical construct, right? And she was the lady... She's the only... If you ask someone to say... like, because there's a big push to get women in STEM now.
Yeah.
For some crazy reason. Right? Because, I mean... all the best you can hope for is, like... a lady chemist is going to come up with a new hairspray.
Wait, I thought you wanted women in STEM.
I know.
We did this on an episode recently.
It's a recurring bit.
Okay.
But if you ask someone, like... well, name a female scientist. Every single person goes, because there's only the one anyone's ever heard of.
Yeah.
And they go, Marie Curie. And to which I always respond, and doing science killed her. Right? She died doing her science. So do you want women to die? Because science kills women. The only one that we know of, dead.
Yeah, I mean, good point.
Dead. In fact, they still claim, which is ridiculous, that her notebooks have to be kept in a lead-lined box because they're still so hot.
That's baloney.
Right. I know, it is. But she is not real. I mean, she's the real person. There was a Marie Curie.
Okay.
But she, like Lone Scum, Elon Musk, like so many people, are participants in the grand deception. And so...
Helen Keller.
The reason... Helen Keller, right? Although Helen Keller was just a shyster and a fraud. She wasn't. I
think you mean what's her friend's name?
Anne Sullivan.
Anne Sullivan. Yeah.
The greatest insult I ever heard, ever, was my wife's grandmother, who was an aged lady at the time. She's since passed on. You know, God rest her soul. But my wife's cousin, another girl, she came down the stairs of this home, and she asked my wife's mother if she could help her with her hair. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because she was ready to go out for the night. And the aged grandmother, sitting in the rocking chair, looked up, and she looked at the woman, the mother, being asked to help with the hair. And she said, "Darling, she's not Anne Sullivan." Because Anne Sullivan's known as the miracle worker. Right? That's the greatest insult I've ever heard. And I was like, because it's so many, you had to know who Anne Sullivan was, know her nickname, and then get the subtle, like, you're asking for a miracle if you want your hair fixed. Which is, she's doing this to her, granddaughter. And she had dementia at the time, which is why she was doing that. Because it had destroyed all of her filter, but she still remembered somehow who Anne Sullivan was.
Yeah.
Right? Which is great. That's one of the reasons dementia is the most fun way to die. Is because people say the most insane things. So Anne Sullivan also was just a shyster. I don't think they were part of Babylon. I think they were just scammers.
Okay.
They were just...
They got adopted into Babylon later for narrative purposes.
Yeah. I bet. But, so anyway, Marie Curie is one of these people who is a character construct to sell you something. Namely, to sell you on basically atomic weapons, atomic energy, the atomic age.
Okay.
Marie Curie and her husband Pierre allegedly discovered radium, right?
Mm-hmm.
Element 88. Now, you happen to know what day they discovered that on? Allegedly.
The 11th of something.
No, December. Good guess. December 21st.
What's that mean?
The winter solstice.
Oh.
Which is what they always do, right? And the winter solstice lasts 3 days. And it's this pause of the southward movement of the sun. It stops for a minute, and then after about 3 days, it starts moving northward in the sky. And this pause is the solstice, Latin sol for sun and sisto for stop. The solstice, the sun stop. And it was seen in mythology and everything as the death and rebirth of the sun god. Right? It reached the death of the sun, which is why Christmas comes there. They put Christmas there, even though Jesus was most certainly probably born in the summer. Mm-hmm. They put it there to sort of grabble things up a bit and be like, oh, well, the death of the sun and the rebirth of the sun, and oh, look, the sun is born. That whole thing, right? So they discover radium on the summer solstice. And on the periodic table, of course, radium is represented by Ra, the Egyptian sun god.
Okay.
Right, Ra.
Yeah?
Ra.
Uh-huh.
The sun goes down, the sun comes up. Here's when they... Okay, so, and, I mean, there's a little bit of numerology there. 1221 is 12 plus 21 is 33, which is all this stuff. And this is how this was the discovery of radiation, and her work leads directly into, like, the nuclear age and the nuclear bomb.
Right. Yep.
Okay. Which I've argued before is not real. And that it is a trick, a deception to scare people into following whatever the narrative is.
Just for people that are new to the show, you are in fact a nuclear physicist, correct?
Well, adjacent.
Adjacent. Okay.
The word nuclear and physicist is in my title.
Not totally uninformed on the topic.
But there's a third word.
Okay.
In my title
right.
Also.
We can keep that a secret.
There's a secret. Anywho, so Marie Curie's doing all this stuff, and she just so happens to do this on the summer solstice, and when it's moving 3 days, and the rebirth, and it becomes Ra, and the number equals 33, and all that, which is fine. But she is well, just say her name. What's the main thing of alchemy? Mercury. Marie Curie. It's right there.
Ooh.
She's Mary Curie. She's Mercury.
Okay.
Right? Marie Curie. Marie Curie.
Oh, man.
Who discovered... Who does that? Who brings Ra into... Because what is the ultimate goal of the nuclear bomb? It's to harness the power of the sun, allegedly. It's all sun worship. Because
I'm still a little messed up about Mary Curie. Honestly.
What do you mean?
I mean, that's kind of crazy.
Oh yeah, they just named her Mercury. And that's why she had to be the woman scientist, the only one, and also why she had to die, because Mercury was the god who transported souls to the underworld, and the Mercury symbol, like if you look up the astrological sign, is the same as the feminine symbol, just with the horns on top.
Oh, dude.
It's the same thing.
Okay.
Like, the female symbol of like the circle with the cross under it?
Yeah.
The symbol for Mercury, either the metal or the planet, is that with two little horns on the side of the circle on the top.
Dang, dude.
Because that's why she had to die, and she had to be a woman. It wouldn't have worked otherwise, right? That's also why Freddie Mercury had to be gay, because Mercury had to be feminine. You see where it's going?
I mean, okay, that may have been. He also had to die in a famous way from the AIDS. Mm-hmm. It has to be the feminine, and you have to die to be the Mercury symbol, right? And both of them had to be named Mercury. One quite explicitly, Freddie Mercury, and the other, Mary Curie. Which is, if you just say it real quick, it's like, oh, that is Mercury. Right? And so you know that the nuclear bomb thing isn't real because just think about the Bikini Atoll. Because the thing is, they'll be like, oh, you can't go there, it's not safe. Right? It's not safe. Mm-hmm. And we won't let the people that allegedly used to live there go back. Because the radiation is just so intense. It's just so... But then you look at pictures of it like, well, how's the trees growing there then? Yeah.
Why the crab there? Just ask that. Why the crab there? Why the crab there? Right, they have cells too. Because the whole thing of radiation is that the radio, the gamma ray or the X-ray or whatever it is, goes in, and the idea is, although... we're not 100% sure on this. This is just the best working explanation at the time. Hits your DNA and breaks it apart. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes it doesn't get recombined properly. And then that makes the cell go cancerous.
Right.
That's the idea.
Which is baloney, but okay.
Well, no, it seems to work. That's fine.
I got problems with it personally.
Well, I mean, maybe, but this is why like younger children tend to be more radio sensitive. People believe because they are they have more cell growth, mm-hmm. So they simply have more times when the DNA is collected into a bundle in the center of the cell to be copied. That's happening more often with them, so they have more chances of the photon to at random hit their bundle of DNA.
Okay.
Right. So, and that's why, like, the brain, which doesn't undergo much cell division, is one of the most radio unsensitive organs.
Oh.
Because you can hit the brain with all kinds of radiation. It doesn't really matter. It's the organs which have the most cell division going on, which are the most sensitive to radiation damage. That's why, like, gonads are, because they're always producing new cells, mm-hmm. right? Sperm or eggs or whatever. Or... the wall of the uterus lining is always multiplying and stuff. So that's why these things are more radiosensitive. That's the best working theory at the moment for why that is. But then you say, why are crab there? How is crab there? Crab has cells. Mm-hmm. Trees have cells. Yeah. Coconut tree has cells. Mm-hmm. If this is a giant, if indeed we set off this giant sun explosion, we harness the power of the sun by the efforts of Mary Curie, and others, and really gay Robert Oppenheimer. If we did that, then how is crab there?
It's a good question.
If it's this hot zone that causes all this stuff, like the tree should also be dead. This is the same problem with Chernobyl.
Yeah, I was about to say
Chernobyl happened like they said.
Yeah.
The plant shouldn't be there either, because plants have cells. They all have cells. All of them, all of the life on Earth has the cell that makes the DNA in the center that then to make a new cell copies when it's undergoing cell division. And so that's how you know that the Bikini Atoll, whatever happened there originally, was not poisoned to an extreme degree in any fashion through any sort of radiation poisoning that's a problem, because other things with cells are still growing there, right? And it's not well, it's just not what they say. And so Mary Curie had to do this for the same reason that people push race mixing in the current climate.
What?
Well, because it's all an alchemical process. So the alchemical process alchemy is about, and what I'm trying to get people to see is that there are still practicing alchemists, and what these magicians, which I've talked about in the show, do frequently is various forms of black magic, including but not limited to alchemy. They may all fall under the alchemical umbrella.
Okay.
I'm not sure how you want to classify it. But what alchemy is about is transmutation. The turning of one thing into another thing.
Right. Lead into gold and so forth.
Lead into gold being the most famous attempted example, which, by the way, modern physics claims to have done. It was an alchemical process in the nuclear zone, right? Mm-hmm. So what I'm saying is actually tracking. The nuclear physics, which was heralded by Mary Curie, eventually created the thing which achieved the alchemical dream. Turning lead into gold. It happens in nuclear reactors all the time.
Oh.
It's just in such a small quantity that it's not, you can't gain anything monetarily from doing it because it costs outrageously much to get a small amount. But that was never the point. The point was just to do it.
Okay.
And we can do it now. Through Mary Curie. So, in the alchemical process, you would put things inside of a vessel, a sealed vessel. Mm-hmm. And it would undergo 4 steps by various processes. This was and I'm going to butcher the Latin here, but forgive me. It was the negrito, the blackening, the albedo, the white stage, mm-hmm. the cintrinitas, the yellow, and the rubedo, the red. Red and yellow, black and white. And so the magicians of our world sold people on the spell that there were 4 broad races, red and yellow, black and white, which would be largely like the red or the Mexicans and the Native Americans. The yellow are the Asians. The black people are the black, obviously, and the whites are the whites. And that in the alchemical vessel, whatever you had in the vessel, you would first begin by the negrito process. You would begin by blackening it. So the stage is to transmute something from what it is to something you prefer, or whatever you're trying to change it into. You have to start by blackening it, right? Which is why there are websites like black.com, where they have interracial porn. Because they're trying to blacken the human population. Are you following?
I mean, yeah, I get it. Okay, keep going.
It gets weird, but this is what's actually happening. So they're trying to, because they believe it's the idea of decay, and this is not my belief, but they believe that like the black portion of the population is like the most base and low.
So you're trying to take you're trying to put a belief system model upon the actions of the people governing the world.
Well, I'm not putting it on it. This is what it is.
No, I guess you're trying to extrapolate their belief system from their actions and using.
I mean, they say this explicitly
alchemy
in
as a
some
model.
places.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So they want to remake. They said they need to make a new man.
Mm-hmm.
They want to it's the transhumanism movement.
Okay.
How do you do that? Well, you have to begin by breaking the thing down. And they believe, this is not what I believe, this is what their thought process, which is why they want to mix everyone up and make like they want to get a bunch of black immigrants into the West and into other places for this reason. It's a magical reason. It's not simply because they, economics or whatever. It's this weird reason, and it's pretty explicit, right? They believe that by doing that, that's the Negrito process of the blackening process of the human population. Step one. Okay? So you this process in the vessel is like the process of decay. It's the process of breaking down a thing so they can then rise like a phoenix back up.
Okay.
Which is why I've been warning people, like, they're gonna push like white people bad, white people bad, white people bad for a long time, but then they're gonna flip it. Because the next stage is the albedo, where you bring up the white part of the elements. Right? This is what I fear may be happening now with the sudden flip on Ukraine and like neo-Nazism. And I tell people to watch out for this because they're going to arouse your passions to then hate black people after they've and you have to watch it, because what they're going to do is it's this blackening process, and then they flip it after they feel it's been quote unquote decayed enough to bring up the albedo, the whitening process, right? And this is where you after you've decayed away all of the extraneous things from an object, you're left with its pure essence. And so what they actually believe, this is why they do it, is they're searching for a pure white race. It is they talk about white supremacy because they are that at 100%.
Okay.
Right, like this is they hate black people.
So they're projecting.
They think that but they also hate a lot of white people, and they think a lot of white people are not up to their standards. So they believe that they will bring in a bunch of other people, those which are not up to their standards, will eventually interbreed with them and be diluted, and then they'll be separated out from the rest of the white, the pure stuff in the middle, the albedo, right? And then you have then you bring in the yellow in the alchemical process, the Trinitas process, which is the Asian population. That comes in and brings that stage is associated with wisdom or education or enlightenment. So after you've purified the race, you bring in the Eastern Enlightenment. You see, the Eastern wisdom, and then you're left with the transformation of the man into red man, or which is that's the final stage of the which is why there's the new American, the new red man. Does that make sense? This is exactly what they're doing, by the way. It is racist and it is white supremacist and all this, but it's not for the reasons people imagine. It is deeply alchemical process, and they've been at this for centuries.
Interesting.
Right? And this is...
So what state... So you're saying we're between steps 1 and 2 right now as a society?
Right. So after you do the blackening process, the inferior whites, again in their minds, are not... This is not me. This is what I'm describing their belief. Will have been mixed in with the blacks, which they believe are inferior. And then that will leave a pure core of whites which are worthy for whatever, because they resisted all of the calls to degrade themselves. Okay. Right. This is why they do all this stuff. It's not just black people. It's like, this is why they push all the forms of degeneracy, because they see it as like, well, if you fall for it, that means you weren't good enough. You fell through the holes in the net. Okay. It's like a sifting process. And so they're searching for the pure white, right? It is this weird and racist. It is. And they want that to come out. Then you bring in the Eastern, because the yellow, the sun, the rising sun, it all tracks with how things lay out. You bring that over, Eastern mysticism, Buddhism, all that stuff, and you put that, and then you reach the final transformation, which is the red phase, because that's when you're heating things up to solidify it. It glows red, you know, when you're doing like metallurgy and stuff. That's where that comes from, and so
is the yellow phase purely philosophical, or are they actually going to, or is this continuing a eugenics program?
This is a continual eugenics program.
Okay, so they're actually going to bring Asians and whites together.
Well, they already are. I mean, at least they've brought in most of the quote unquote new age and stuff that they've tried to put onto people has come from the East. It's like versions of Eastern mysticism, and you put it on, because the yellow stage is also identified in the psychological alchemy with education, wisdom, and stuff like that. Okay. Which is why they portray the Asians as super smart and educated. Even though they're not really any more than people over here. I mean, they really care about school, but like they're no smarter. They're not dumber either. But it's like they have to create this illusion that like that's the education sector. That's where all the wisdom is. Yeah. Right? And then that has to be brought over. That's also why the red man, the Indians, had to be oppressed the hardest, because that's the stage when you're heating up the element to its hottest degree to solidify it into its new form. It's all this weird stuff, but this is what they're doing, right? And that's why like the Bikini Atoll, right? Well, I mean, which I talked about earlier, it's an alchemical thing, because it's the transmutation of one into another. It's the water into air, like, because you blow up all that, what goes up, and then it burns up and it all boils into the air, right? And then it condenses back down into the so it's like death and rebirth. And another clue that it was alchemical is because, you know, that, like I said, the feminine symbol and the Mercury symbol have that cross at the bottom of the thing. Well, that's why Mercury, also the god of the underworld, or the god that varied souls to the underworld, was the god of the crossroads, right? Like the choices you would make. And the Bikini Atoll test was called Operation Crossroads. Oh. Right? So Mercury, it's all there. The god Ra, radium, Ra. 88 on the periodic table, which is 8. It's a multiple of 11, which always starts a spell. It's so obvious once you see it. And I know that sounds a little schizophrenic.
This is a pretty schizo segment.
It's a pretty schizo segment. But just, again, god of the underworld, feminine, Mercury. It's on the winter solstice, discovers Ra, radium, which leads to the sun god, harnessing of the power of the sun on the death and rebirth of the sun. It's all sun worship. It's the same. I'm trying to point out to people what their alchemy never went away at all, and they've taught you to think of it as nonsense, because that hides its power from those that aren't initiated into it.
There's a lot of very tidy symbolic alignment in that whole bit there.
Oh yeah, they do it everywhere. Once you begin to see it, like the supposed nuclear bomb tests, the first ones, allegedly, quote unquote, made perfect, basically hexagrams on the ground. Oh. Because of its explosion pattern. Have you seen this? No. Yeah, they made like hexagrams on the ground of glassified sand, allegedly. Of course that didn't happen, but that's part of the narrative to like, it's a giant spell. It's all a giant, and they do this because it really does work. Like they achieve aims through this process. This is it's not foolishness. This does affect the world, like these connections that you think like, oh, that is not anything, but no, like actually that, because what they're doing is they're changing your perception of the world, which changes the world.
Okay.
Right? It's the illusion. It's illusion craft. It's spellcraft. If everyone believes in the atomic bomb, then the world gets fundamentally changed. If everyone believes in all their stuff they're selling you, like I said, Freddie Mercury had to participate in the blackening process of degeneracy and stuff and he had to be gay and also die. Right? He had to be. And that's why Mary Curie had to die. Even though whether or not she really did, I have no idea. I know that her books are definitely certainly not radioactive still. I mean, maybe a little bit, but nothing that would be dangerous.
Right, like that. Yeah, you should be able to look at her books by now. But I guess maybe if people did, they would be a little disappointed in what they found. Maybe.
Yeah, it would be like, I'm having an affair with my student. Albert Einstein says it's okay, which really happened. There was her husband died allegedly after getting run over by a horse and buggy.
Okay.
Which when it happened, they drew. If you look at the newspaper articles, and I'll see if I can find them. They had like a picture drawn of a horse, like ran over a man in Paris. Yep. And on the circle, so a carriage wheel has the elements of the mercurial symbol in it, right? It has the wheel, which is the circle, and the cross of the hub, right? Mm-hmm. And then in the newspaper article, they had the wheel with the hub, and then there were two little horns on it, on the wheel.
Ooh.
Just to solidify, like this is and no one noticed, obviously, except schizophrenic people like the circles I went in, like, looky there. But who looked through newspaper articles from 100 years ago, looking for weird. But those sorts of people who are severely autistic notice that sort of thing, and they do this because this is how I'm trying to elucidate people into how spells work. Like, if you want to understand it, well, first of all, if you really want to understand it, go join your local masonry club.
Don't do it.
But if you want to understand what they're doing, you can. I used to have the Masons like little Bible book. I had a couple of them, and they talk about this stuff in like sort of cagey ways. But as you go higher up the thing, that they get more explicit about it. Like they wear masks of the god Anubis and stuff. It's weird. I know a guy that's in it, and he showed me his Anubis mask.
Oh, really? They're not supposed to do that.
What? I said, stop doing that. I was like, stop. What are you doing?
If you read like Albert Pike, Morals and Dogma, that stuff's pretty crazy.
Well, yeah, because the modern science was started as an alchemical project, and it never stopped. Newton was the last great magician that was open about it. Isaac Newton translated the Emerald Tablets of Thoth.
He did?
Yeah. Which were, they were never, if they were ever tablets, we lost the tablets. But they've been this thing, which was allegedly first recorded by Hermes Trismegistus.
Okay.
Right, which me and Godward talk about briefly in the interview. But there were 13, declarations of how the universe works, allegedly handed down by the Egyptian god Thoth to Hermes Trismegistus. Hermes, right? Hermes Trismegistus meaning Hermes the thrice.
So Hermes Trismegistus he's like the OG alchemist wizard guy.
Yeah, maybe not even a real person. Maybe not a real person, but definitely if he was a real person, he was a weirdo.
Okay.
Like an ancient Aleister Crowley. But he may just be an amalgamation of things.
Okay.
Who knows? But Hermes is the Roman version of
Mercury.
Yeah. Same thing, right? So Hermes, so Newton, because Mercury is the fundamental alchemical element. It's like the most useful thing they use in all
It's their like main catalyst.
their main catalyst, right? And so Marie Curie had to be the main catalyst to enter into the atomic age, right? So yeah, but so Isaac Newton was a deeply alchemical man, and he was trying to create the Philosopher's Stone, and in doing so, did some gravity work on accident. But it's really how it happened. I mean, he wrote like screeds of psychobabble about trying to figure out the Book of Revelation.
Oh yeah, he was out there. He was not. He was not
crazy.
A scientist by modern standards at all. I mean, he
Not
was
even a
intelligent,
little bit.
but he was also totally into weird sorcery.
He was a genius. He was a. I mean, to invent calculus, you have to be pretty
Right, but like what the
intense.
his reason for living wasn't science. It was as
It
we
was to create
imagine
a philosopher's
Yeah,
stone.
it was sorcerer. He was a sorcerer more than he would ever be called a scientist.
Yes, he was 100% a sorcerer, and he had, which you can still see in the King's College Library at Cambridge, his translation of the Emerald Tablets of Thoth by Hermes Trismegistus, which is like, number one is, "'Tis true," and this is written in his own hand, in Isaac Newton's hand. "'Tis true without error, certain and most true. That which is below is like to watch that which is above," like that, as above so below, right there, right? That's where that comes from. "And that which is above is like that which is below, to do the miracles of only one thing. And as all things have been and arose from one by the meditation of one, so all things have their birth from this one thing." And it goes on and on. It's 14 statements, 13, but one is like an intro. It's 14 lines, and that's the whole thing. And he kept this, and this was like his meditation on like how the world works. And then he was like trying to find like the Philosopher's Stone, and then along the way he was like, "Oh look, light prisms, interesting. Oh, calculus, here we go." And then apples fall, all this, his laws of motion. But he was looking for and people are still doing that.
Yeah,
they just don't tell you about it because the alchemists never revealed their secrets. And to some degree, maybe the Philosopher's Stone, maybe this is why they had to do the whole thing with pretend they harnessed the power of the sun. Because to some degree, maybe the sun, if cosmology does work as people say, like at NASA, which I'm highly dubious of, but if it do, then the stars would be the Philosopher's Stone, because the stars make all the elements. That would be like the thing that makes all the other things.
right.
So they would have to harness, by harnessing, if they believe that, then by harnessing the power of the sun in the atomic energy, they would be proclaiming themselves to have attained the Philosopher's Stone. Through Marie Curie. Through like it gets weird, and if think about it too long, it does make you gay. Which is why they all become that. It makes you weird, and it makes you like do a bunch of weird stuff. So I don't recommend thinking about it.
Well, the whole
But you
idea
do
of
need to
like,
understand,
transmutation, turning that quickly gets applied to sexuality. Turning man into woman
Right,
and woman
and
into man. That's transgenderism is, I think,
and transhumanism,
linked into this. Yeah.
and the whole shebang, and transhumanism and transspeciesism and the whole thing, because they don't believe, it's a fundamentally Gnostic belief, which is they believe that our bodies are bad, the source of all suffering. We wouldn't suffer if we didn't have the bodies, and that we need to be transmuted into a purely spiritual form without bodies, which, that may be a little difficult, but maybe a nice intermediate step would be to be digital.
Huh.
What if we were all uploaded to a computer?
Yeah.
Which is what they're after. I mean, this is what Elon Musk is promising you, which is why I say do not go along with Elon Musk. He is another creepy guy at the creepy table who wants to upload you. He wants to put a chip in your head.
Yeah, man.
He says this explicitly. Do not trust him. He has a company that wants to put chips in your brain. Right? And everyone's like, "Yay, he's our right-wing hero. Hooray!" And they're just like, "Doop-a-doo, these people are so easy to dupe." And people are, because they write off the idea that there are people using black magic against them as absurd, which is exactly what the black magicians would want. If you're a black magician, you want everyone to believe that you doing that is impossible. Mm-hmm. And they sold you on that 100%. So, I hope that explained a lot of stuff. Does that make the world more or less clear?
Oh, man, good question. Not sure.
Does that make the world more or less
Probably
clear?
less clear.
Probably less clear. But yeah, that's why Freddie Mercury had to die of AIDS, which again was fake. I mean, he probably did die, but, you know, AZT or whatever. And that's why he had to be the way he was. It explains so many things. And when you start looking for these, just begin to notice when famous people have names attached to, or famous things have names attached to pagan gods. Like, for instance, when they were going to the moon, why did they call it the Apollo missions?
Yeah.
That's the sun. That's not the moon. You'd have it would make sense if you were going to the sun, right? But they call it the Apollo missions. And what did they call the other one? The Gemini. And they're all these, it's endless. It's endless the way these people do. And people don't notice because they've been taught from birth that that's all silly. There's no way that could be possible. Right? So anyway. Yeah. Mary Curie. You hear it?
I hear it.
Mary Curie. It always has to be in plain sight. It's one of the rules. Like, if you just, and so many, that's why I like it. Like, I'm not saying she didn't exist as a person, but like her character, probably her name, was chosen for that reason. And she may have had some different name when she was born, but they're like, "You're Mary Curie now." Like, okay, I'll be Mary Curie. Yeah. And that happens with a lot of people. But it is what it is. You know, there's nothing to be done about it. The real jihad was the friends we made along the way. That's all it comes down to. Let's do a chicken segment, and then we'll talk to Godward.
That sounds great.
Godward, yeah. Did you like my Buster Keaton song?
I did. I don't know who Buster Keaton is, though.
He was the what? What do you mean you don't know who Buster Keaton is?
I don't know who he is.
He was Charlie Chaplin before Charlie Chaplin. It's one of the worst things in American cinema is that people know who Charlie Chaplin was, but not Buster.
It sounds like I better do some homework.
Buster Keaton was the greatest silent film star. His stuff is still funny. His silent stunts.
I'll check it out.
He did these insane stunts. Like, he would run in front of a moving train, but he really was doing that.
Nice.
You know, and he would like jump on it and stuff. He was his physical comedy was so intense that I watch it and I'm still like in awe.
He was like
and they
the
all
first guy
they all did it in one
He was
take.
the first guy to eat Tide Pods.
Yeah.
For likes.
Except he was like yeah, he was the first guy to eat Tide Pods for likes on the internet. And he was and Charlie Chaplin gets all the credit as like the greatest, you know, but Buster Keaton really set the standard. And Buster Keaton lived to be into the 1960s.
Good for him.
Died, you know, because he was old. But yeah, okay.
Let's continue. So continuing in our occasional segments about survivalism, and we're sort of in the suburban exurban phase of now. Calm down, sir. We're sort of in the suburban exurb mode of survivalism. How are you going to make it in the suburbs when the supply chain breaks down and we're all scrapping for survival? You don't want to go to the FEMA camp. I mean, if you do want to go to the FEMA camp, you can skip this segment. This isn't for you. But those of us who want to stay out, you need some source of nitrogen fertilizer for your garden. We've talked all about gardening in prior segments, but after maybe 2 years worth of vegetable growing, if you don't have some way to get nitrogen back into your soil, your yields are going to decline and you will have very poor crops, and then you'll starve and you'll have to go to the FEMA camp. So, you need a source of nitrogen. Now, some might say, hey, what about rabbits? Well, rabbits are...
That's my answer always.
I know. So I'm gonna briefly talk about rabbits here, because I know this comes up. So there are some good things about rabbits. One, they're a very discreet source of protein. You can put them in a cage in your garage. They make almost no noise. You can breed them. You can feed them just about anything. And if you set up their environment right, they will multiply, and you can sort of have a little colony there you can pull protein from. Now, their poop is fantastic fertilizer, and you don't have to compost it or anything. As soon as you can take it, scoop it up out of the pen or whatever, throw it right in the garden. It's great fertilizer. It's not going to burn your plants. And they can be kept in small space. So those are great things about rabbits. Now, there's some cons, though. One is that they're very low in fat, and you need fat in your diet. And if you don't, you can have all the protein you want, but if you don't have enough fat, you're going to run into health problems before too long. And so rabbits won't get either.
Can you eat their organ meat? I've heard people say you can eat their organ meat to mitigate that. Is that true? Like if you eat their liver?
Maybe. I don't know. That's a great question.
They have fat on their liver, I think, maybe.
That's worth researching. If you eat the visceral fat, will that help? I mean, if there is visceral fat, I'm sure it would help because you need fat. Right. So as you're taking apart the rabbit, maybe note the viscera for fat content and try to get that. And
I've heard people starving to death eating rabbit.
Yeah, rabbit starvation is a thing that happened.
Rabbit starvation.
And so maybe eating the viscera is a solution to that. I don't know, but that's a great point.
What animals in the wild, like just around your average suburban house, could you use to get fat? Like if you, let's say rabbits were like your main calories and protein, but you needed some fat. Like would birds work? Like could you kill some birds?
Birds, yeah, some birds. If you can get large, like a turkey has a lot of fat on it. If you can get one of those, they're hard to hunt. Really, if I was just on a mission to get fat, I would eat raccoon or possum.
Ooh,
I mean, gross, but if you fry up a raccoon in a cast iron skillet, you'll probably get a decent amount of grease out of that.
I was accosted by a family of armadillos the other day.
No kidding.
And I was out hiking, and they came right up to me as if they were wanting a handout. Mm-hmm. You know, like it was like I was a Disney princess, and they were ugly forest creatures. And instead of singing a song, they were like, give us some food. Like it was like if the Disney animals were homeless people, and I didn't want to touch them because they may have the leprosy.
Yeah, they're unclean.
And so I was like trying to shoo them away, but they didn't. They don't shoo. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you have experience with armadillos.
I do have a funny armadillo story.
Oh, do tell.
So a buddy of mine, we were working at a Boy Scout camp, and his job was to maintain the ropes course. So he was up on the ropes course tightening bolts and stuff with this big, huge, long wrench that you tighten all the clamps on the cables with. And they were taking a break, and he saw an armadillo running along the ground, 20, 30 feet below him. And he thought it'd be funny to throw the wrench at the armadillo. So he does, and the wrench penetrates the armadillo, and the armadillo runs off into the woods with his only wrench. And there was an all-hands call to find the armadillo with a wrench sticking out of it. And all work at the camp stopped until we found the one wrench that could fix the ropes course. It was great.
Did you find the armadillo?
We did. He had got stuck in a fence and was mortally wounded and dying, and we ripped the wrench from his carcass. And my friend went back to his. Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
I haven't seen this guy in a while, so maybe his digits have rotted off from leprosy. Maybe he listens to the show. He can holler at me and let me know if he's got all his.
Well, I think
digits.
It's curable now. I think it's bacterial.
Yeah.
And you can just take antibiotics. I think when they discovered penicillin, that sort of just got rid of leprosy. But,
well, maybe that's what this guy did. He got some antibiotics.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay,
back to
so-
rabbits. Back to rabbits.
But my point is, could you eat armadillos? But maybe.
I wouldn't try it. I'd go for raccoons or possums first if I'm looking for fat content.
Okay.
The other bad things about rabbits is that they eat their young and bite off each other's genitals. If their accommodations aren't just right, they kind of go crazy and act really psycho and messed up.
Rodents in general do that.
Yeah.
Like hamsters or whatever, they'll start eating each other.
Yeah, it's not pretty.
If you have I always like when people have little hamsters and like they're cute, but like to the hamster's perspective, they're in like a sci-fi Hunger Games scenario.
It's all Watership Down.
It's all Watership Down.
Yeah, with the
It
rodents.
is. Yeah.
So, people say chickens are brutal, but rodents are worse. So now we're going to get into chickens. Now, here's what's great about chickens. They will give you both meat and eggs, both with high fat content, and great nutritional profile, specifically in the eggs. In fact, an egg from a healthy, well-fed chicken has everything you need to survive except for vitamin C. So you can eat
It's always
eggs
the scurvy.
and some dandelions, and you'll live.
Oh, dandelions?
Yeah, they have lots of vitamin C. And another great thing about
Pine
chickens.
straw has vitamin C.
Yeah, I wouldn't eat the dry stuff.
Pine
Young
needles.
pine needles. Just make sure it's not hemlock.
You can make pine needle tea.
Yeah. Very rich in
Get
vitamin C.
Yeah.
And another great thing about chickens is that there are many options for keeping them. And we'll go over some of those options in the segment. Now, some of the cons. They're less discreet than rodents are. They do make a little bit...
You mean,
they make
you mean
a little...
the animal that screams on this podcast once every other episode?
Yeah,
That's discreet.
yeah. They can make some noise. Now, there are certain things you can do to mitigate that. I mean, if you don't have a rooster, you won't be able to multiply your flock in and of itself, but at least they'll be quiet. But they are even the hens are less discreet than rabbits.
Now, let me ask you about that. Has anyone considered turkey farming? Because turkeys can generate asexually.
They can?
Oh yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, turkeys can, and it's very strange, but turkeys are capable of asexual reproduction. Like if you keep a bunch of female turkeys alone for a long enough time, they will lay viable eggs, and strangely, the egg is almost always male. You'd think it would be a carbon copy of the mother.
That's bonkers.
They're one of the few, they're one of the few animals that can, that aren't tiny, because bacteria and stuff can do that. But they're one of the few macroscopic animals capable of asexual reproduction.
I'm going to take up turkey farming. This is fantastic.
I think there are often problems with the offspring though. You can't do this generation after generation.
So it's like a last ditch survival mechanism.
Yeah, it's very weird. But birds don't have XY chromosomes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, birds and lizards have a different chromosome thing. I think it's it doesn't, X and Y look like X and Y, sort of, like the shape. And then they called the birds Z and W just because it was on either side of X and Y.
Okay.
But they don't actually look like X and Y.
Interesting.
But the sex are Z and W. They don't actually look like but the sex chromosomes of birds and lizards are Z and W.
Weird.
Which is, it's strange. And the males have, the males are the ones with the homomorphic chromosomes, if I remember correctly. They both have ZZ, I think. Mm-hmm. And the females have ZW. So in mammals, the females have the heteromorphic the females have the homomorphic where it's XX. And the males have the heteromorphic XY. But it's reversed in birds and lizards, which is why the female turkey asexually gives birth to a male turkey, because the W comes from a male, and the base is just the Z, and so she copies one of those twice, making him. It's strange.
That's very weird.
It's very weird. I don't know. Don't ask me why I know so much about bird sex chromosomes, but I do.
Chickens have no external...
It's been a thing I've needed to know at times.
Chickens have no external sex organs.
I know that's also true of most birds, except for ducks.
Yeah, ducks have a weird,
which have insanely long penises.
psycho corkscrew penises.
Ducks have. Let's do a segment about duck penises for a second. So ducks, if you don't know, are crazy rapists.
Yeah.
We used to keep ducks, and ducks will, during mating season, a group of male ducks will just literally gang rape a female duck. It's violent, and as a young child, scarring to watch. But I had to, because we had the ducks. And they would, so this poor girl duck would try to get away in the water. And they would jump on her and hold her underwater where she's drowning. While they're trying to, and then the female duck doesn't want this to happen, obviously, because she likes to be romanced.
Yeah.
Right?
You can't rush it.
Gang rape is not romantic.
Not at all.
In general, there are probably some women that are into that, but on the whole, it's not. And so, as a defense mechanism, sort of, the female duck has a labyrinthine vagina structure with many dead ends that do not go to the uterus. And the male duck has a penis that is about when it's fully uncoiled and it coils up in a corkscrew fashion, is about twice as long as his body. It's true. When they die, it becomes flaccid and flumps out. It's and it goes in and it tries to, and like a doctor with an orthoscope, it tries to find the correct path during the gang raping. It's horrible.
This is awful.
Ducks should be genocided from the earth for this.
Their eggs are great though, man.
Their eggs are great, but the way they're made is just, now it's weird because some ducks with mallards would pair, a lady mallard will find a male mallard she likes and they'll pair off for a long time.
Okay.
Sometimes their whole lives.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like romance doesn't happen in the duck community,
mm-hmm.
but the duck community has a serious consent problem on the whole.
Yeah.
That they need to work on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure how to get through to them on it. Because you also get these strange hybrid duck breeds because of this. I saw a Muscovy mallard the other day. Muscovies, I think I've talked about them on the show before.
They're ugly.
They're the ugly ones. They have cancer faces. And they're incapable of quacking. They're the only ducks that don't quack, and instead they hiss, they go like that at you.
Yeah.
And they attack snakes, which is strange for a duck. But if the Muscovy duck sees a snake, they go and they run at it and they peck it apart.
Awesome.
And this Muscovy mallard, who I assume was a rape baby, it was it couldn't decide if it could quack or not. It was it was the weirdest, saddest thing I've ever seen. And it made me again think that maybe we should look again at the duck question and see if there is a final solution, because ducks have problems. As you said, they're one of the few birds that do have external genitalia.
And they're horrible.
And it's a nightmare. On both sides, frankly.
It is the position of the MAPS podcast that all birds should have only internal genitalia.
Yes, but is it the male's fault or is it the female's fault, though, here? This is the question I've got.
I don't know.
Because why does she do that with her side? If she didn't make it that, I don't know. Maybe that's what the male has to do to get past all of that maze to the birth canal.
This is a metaphor for relationships.
It really is.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Everything comes down to ducks eventually.
Mm-hmm. But back to chickens.
Right. Chickens, they don't.
So there are some cons to chickens. Less discreet. They require more elaborate enclosures than the rodents do. And their fertilizer is very hot and requires composting before you can use it in your garden. But in my opinion, because of eggs, just how great eggs are, they're the winner. So let's talk about a few approaches you can go through to raise your chickens. And the great thing about chickens is they're adaptable. Now, I want to give some credit to listener and friend of show Lurker, who is who's my chicken mentor and taught me everything I know about chickens. Much of this wisdom is derived from his tutelage. So, first step. Well, let me tell you what you don't do. If you go on the internet and look at chickens, you're gonna see like chicken mommy blogs, where these overindulgent housewives with their little flock of chickens in their well-kept grass and the cute little coop, and there's like kids playing and there's chickens grazing, and none of that's real. So what'll happen if you just have a coop in your backyard, the chickens will come out every day. They'll go to they'll get as close to the door of your house that they can get, and they'll just take lots of dumps. Like right on your doormat, on your steps, they'll just poop everywhere right there, waiting for you to come out and feed them. So you have to have confinement. You have to give them boundaries, or they'll wreck everything. They'll also get into your garden and they'll peck all your vegetables, and they'll eat all your kale, which is a great vegetable, despite what Chad Wolf says. He's wrong, as he often does. Kale is great, but the chickens will ruin it. And so you have to have some sort of a confinement method. So we're going to talk about different approaches to that. The first one is like strict confinement. And this is good for people that live on a small lot. They're in a tight neighborhood, kind of on lockdown. You don't want to bother your neighbors, that sort of thing. So you're keeping them in an enclosure all the time. A great breed for this is the Buff Orpington. They're very quiet and gentle, and they bear confinement well. They're also
Buff
good.
Orpington?
Buff Orpington. I'll have some links in the show notes.
That sounds like a Chad chicken.
Yeah. No, they're
buff.
Yeah, he's buff. But these are great birds because they're meat birds and they're egg birds at the same time. Dual purpose breed, and they're quiet. So if you're in a tight neighborhood, highly recommend the Buff Orpington if you don't want to disturb your neighbors. Even the roosters are pretty quiet, which is rare for any rooster. So now, when you're designing the coop for this thing, needs to have a run attached, which is like a cage where the chickens can get some sunshine and they can run around, have some space to move and peck and scratch and do chicken things. So that's separate. That's exterior to the coop, which is where they sleep. So your coop should be about 3 square foot per bird. It needs roosting bars and laying boxes. I'll link some good like basic design criteria for all these things. I'm just going to run through these in a cursory way. The run, which is the kind of the cage where they're going to spend their outside time, it needs to be about 5 square feet or more per bird. It needs to be fully enclosed over the top and the sides with hardware cloth, and you need to design it so that you can open it up wide and rake it out, because we're getting fertilizer out of these bad boys. So like we talked about in the beginning of the segment, you've got to get the nitrogen. One of the secrets to good homesteading is turning poop from a liability into an asset. So we're turning all this crap that they're laying down in this run all the time. You want to have access to it. So design your run and your coop in such a way that you can rake it out and get all that good stuff out of there. So keep your coop and run heavily bedded with lawn clippings, leaves. Pine shavings are good in the coop, but they do cost money. You want organic material for these things to mess around in. Did I lose you? Did I just lose you, dog? The Illuminati don't want them to know.
Are we back?
You sound back. Are you recording?
Yeah, I'm recording. I forgot to plug in my computer.
Oh, that's a shame.
It's okay. It saved my recording from earlier.
Great. All right, so
we should be good. You were telling me about Buff Orpingtons after we just talked about duck penises.
Yeah. So we're talking about keeping the run. You want to have the run in their coop full of leaves or lawn clippings or any sort of organic material to absorb moisture from the poo and keep it from rotting the structure. In the case of the coop, lawn clippings are great because it gives the chickens something to scratch around in. They'll pick the seeds out of it. They'll grind it all up into compost, and then they poop all over it. And this process that they're going through in the run is eventually going to make some killer compost. So the way you would harvest that is you would get some hardware cloth, which is like a wire mesh, half-inch square wire mesh. And you would make like a big screen. Mine is 4 feet by 4 feet. I throw it over my wheelbarrow, and I shovel up the stuff. I rake up piles, or I hoe up piles of this stuff in my chicken pen, and I throw it onto the screen and shake the screen until all the little good bits of compost come through, and you have beautiful screen compost. Now this, you want to then put that in a compost pile, keep it, wet, and let that bacterial process work and continue to break that stuff down. That's going to mellow the nitrogen down so it's not so hot, and it's going to help kill whatever weed seeds are left in that compost material that the chickens didn't eat. So when you go through this whole process, you'll have nitrogen-rich, weed-free compost to use in your garden. So we're getting that circle of life thing happening. But all this first method is the confinement method. So when, again, you want to design that run in such a way that you can get in there and get that compost, and it's also going to protect your birds and keep them safe from hawks and coyotes and all that kind of stuff. So you really got to build that thing solid and accessible. So that's confinement method. That's for people in tight neighborhoods. Now, if you have a little bit more space, you can do a static coop in a pen and some pasturing. This is the method I use. So I have a really secure coop where they go in at night, and then around that I have a large fenced enclosure that's open to the sky. And then that gives them a lot more walking around, a lot more compost production capacity in that pen, because all they do all day is walk around and scratch that stuff and pick through it and grind it up. And then I let them out to graze once a day. So, we'll get into grazing in a little bit. So good breeds for this static coop, large pen sort of method. Probably the best breed that I've seen for this is the Black Australorp. It's related to the Orpington.
The Black Australorp.
Australorp. So some Australian dude took some Orpington chickens down to Australia and messed around with them, and he made the best egg-producing bird there's ever been ever recorded. So 364 eggs in 1 year, record held by a Black Australorp. They're a fantastic heritage breed. They're not as gentle or quiet as the Buff Orpington, but they have excellent survival instincts, which makes them more suited towards free grazing, because they know how to hide and get away from hawks and other predators, unlike the Orpington, which is sort of a big fat dummy and will just get eaten all the time.
Most chickens are stupid.
Yeah. So the Australorp has some, because it was bred in Australia where everything is trying to kill you all the time. But that's true in America too. It regains some of its. It's true in America.
My neighbor has a chicken coop.
Yeah.
Or had lost all the chickens.
Yeah.
And he's a farmer.
Ooh.
And not only is he a farmer, he's a farmer named McDonald.
Big L,
old.
Man.
He's literally old McDonald. And he has a farm, right? And he put these chickens on his house that's not on his farm. His house is near my house.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And he had a coop. And he told me, I asked him when I went over there last, I said, what happened to our chickens? He said, I discovered that to the critters on this mountain, chickens are cotton candy. And what had happened was a possum.
Yeah.
Got in. He let the chickens out to roam each day, right? And then one day when he did that, and he would put them in the coop at night, as you do.
Mm-hmm.
One day when he did that, a possum went into the coop.
Oh.
And hid it at the top of the coop.
Oh no.
Like a very smart possum that's and the chickens were reluctant to go back into the coop, because they knew something was wrong.
Okay.
But he was like, get in the coop, chickens. And then he locked the door and went to bed.
Mm.
And the possum was like, huzzah, I'm locked in a chicken coop with chickens. Now, the possum was a very smart possum.
I bet that was a mess.
He thought this through, right? And except he didn't think to the end. He got too focused on the reward because he didn't have an escape plan. Right? He was just now locked inside of a chicken coop.
Yeah.
So after he'd finished mauling and eating all of the chickens, because when you have that much, you can just kill one and eat the best part, and then kill the next one and eat that part.
Right.
He had nowhere to go. He was just in the coop. And so my friend McDonald went down and found this blood-soaked possum just sort of in the corner because he's locked in this cage after he just killed all of the...
I regret nothing.
Yeah, he's like, I'm going to die now, but this was worth it. And I don't think McDonald even killed him because, I mean, what would be the point? All his chickens were already gone.
Yeah.
He just let him go. And he's still living his possum life, his best possum life.
Man, that's sad.
But chickens are not smart, and they have very little defenses against things like possums or raccoons or whatever wants to.
Well,
coyotes or foxes or anything.
When it gets dark, chickens sort of go into a trance.
Yeah.
And they're defenseless. If you go into a chicken coop at night, you can just grab any chicken and pick it up and walk away with it. And eventually it will come to and thrash around a little bit, try to escape. But they're
like hypnotized.
Yeah, they're hypnotized. It's the weirdest thing.
I hit one in the head with a rock one time. And
not nice.
I didn't mean to. I was trying to like skip rocks from a distance, and I accidentally hit this chicken.
Yeah.
And it didn't fall over or anything. It just froze in place.
Yeah.
And stopped clucking. And I went and I was like, "Are you okay?" And I picked it up, and it was completely silent. And I just held it for like, "What's wrong with you?" for like 5 minutes. Then all of a sudden it went, "Rah!" And it like woke up.
Yeah, yeah.
Like they go into like a awake coma.
Mm-hmm. It's weird.
At nighttime and when hitting the head with rocks. Which is a strange... Chickens are... they're a weird animal.
They are weird. Okay, we're talking...
Yeah.
Thank you. We're talking about the static coop pen method with some pasturing, okay? So black Australorps are great breed for this. Great survival skills, as I said. Pros on this one. You've got healthier animals and eggs than with the confinement method because they get more time with nature. They can forage better because chickens are actually really good at finding the food that they need in their diet. And when they're allowed to forage for themselves in the woods, they can really... It shines in the health of the animal and the quality of the eggs. And that also reduces your feed costs if you're letting them forage. Now, cons, of this method, they're more vulnerable to predation. All my losses have been due to hawks. I started my first round of chickens. I started with 16 birds, and I'm down to 11 birds, including rooster. So I've put in some things in place that have helped stop the hawk losses. And these are things you just have to figure out. Like in my case, I have a barn, like a mini barn that you get prefab that's up on blocks. And I had screened the bottom of it off because I thought the chickens would go under there and lay eggs and I wouldn't be able to get the eggs. I wanted them to use the nesting boxes I built. But the hawks, when the hawks would come, the rooster would alert them, but the hens would have nowhere to go because there are no shrubs or low bushes inside the pen. So they would just sort of hide in the corner, and a hawk would eat one of them. But now they can run under the barn, and they're safe from the hawk. So you figure things like that out as you're keeping the animals. It's a constant problem solving. Okay, so the fertilizer bit. If you go, like I said, I go in there with a wheelbarrow. I screen the stuff on the ground, and sometimes I use it directly. It's really better to compost it because the chickens are good about getting weed seeds, but they don't get it all. And so if you use it straight out of the pen, it may be too hot and it may have weed seeds, but if you compost that stuff, it's going to be solid gold in like 6 months to a year. Okay, pasturing. I let my chickens out every day to roam wherever they want to go in the neighborhood, and that usually ends up being within about 200 yards of their pen. If you're going to do pasturing, free pasturing, it's great for their diet, but you need to have a good rooster who will defend them and look out for predators, help them find food, and keep them together in a flock. A good rooster will do all these things. He's like a sheepdog for a flock of sheep in many ways, and it's really cool to watch him work. My rooster will find food, call the hens over. They'll come running and he'll watch over them while they eat the food. If a hawk flies over, he gives the alert. They run in the bushes and hide. If a hawk attacks one of them, he'll jump on and attack the hawk and try to save the hen. Roosters are great. They act a little crazy. Sometimes they try to spur you, but you just kind of have to get used to that and, develop a relationship with your rooster. It'll be okay. So if you're gonna do that, if you're gonna start pasturing, I would recommend that you train your hens to come when they're called, like train them with food, so they'll be easier to round up. Now, an alternative method is I herd my chickens like sheep. So I have like a 7-foot staff that I use to flush them out of the neighbor's bushes and stuff. And if you walk behind them, you can sort of learn how to guide them like a flock and push them toward the coop back into the enclosure, and the rooster will help you with this. It's actually really cool. You can train them to do this. So that's the static coop and pen method that I like. I have my penned area is probably about 2,000 square feet. It's a big pen with a high 8-foot like poultry fence on it, so they can't really fly out of it. They don't like to fly very much when they're full grown. Now the third method, and this is what Lurker does, and he's very successful with this, is a fully mobile coop and pen method. So Lurker has big pasture. I'll put up pictures of his stuff so you can see what he does. He's got a lot of pasture on his property, and so he uses a mobile electric fence that has a solar powered charger on it, and he has a lightweight mobile chicken shelter with a roof and nesting boxes.
Now, when you say mobile, do you mean he moves it or it actually rolls around on wheels?
He moves it. So he'll go out there every so many days whenever the patch of grass that they're on gets looking kind of tattered. And he'll just he'll turn the fence off, the electrification off, and he'll start picking up the stakes. It's a mobile fence, so you just pull up the stakes and just start moving it around. And it's kind of a pain, but the chickens are always on fresh grass. And then the little shelter, it's this thing on like a conduit pipe frame, and it's got a little tin roof, and it has some wooden nesting boxes and a couple of wheels and a way to level it because the terrain isn't level, so you need to their shelter and roosting area needs to be sort of level. So what this does is it gives them a roof to hide under, to sleep in case of predators. There's little roosting bars and stuff in there to get them just up off the ground like a foot or something. Gives them a place to hide from predators, stay out of the weather, and then a place where they can hop into a nesting box to lay eggs. It's really kind of Spartan conditions for a chicken. Chickens are naturally forest creatures, jungle creatures, but his flock does really well. He gets great egg output, and the quality, he also raises meat chickens like this, and the quality of the meat is spectacular. So if you have a lot of open pasture that you want to cycle them on, this is a great way to do it. And then you go back and you look at the fertility of the pasture after they've passed over and the grass is regrown. It's fantastic. It's really good for the health of the pasture, especially if you're going to have other animals working through there, which is, you come to the last method here. And this is advanced. So we've gone from like the simplest noob methods to the more advanced, and the most advanced method, which I don't know anybody that does this, but I've read about it and it sounds very cool. So if some of you guys are feeling spry, you can try it. This is a dairy, goat, and chicken co-pasturing. So you have a large. I know about
this. Dairy, goat, and chicken.
Oh, this is cool. So you have a large pasture with fences.
Well, here's the thing.
Okay.
Here's the thing. You can co-pasture.
Mm-hmm.
Flock animals like sheep and goats.
Yep.
With cows.
Yeah.
Because cows they don't eat down to the root of the grass.
Mm-hmm.
They leave about a ½ inch.
Yeah.
But the goats and the sheep eat all the way to the bottom. So you can send the cows through, and then the goats or sheep come through second, and there's still food for them.
So you can send the chickens in with the goats.
And then, yes, exactly.
Because here's what the chickens do. Goats and sheep type animals are prone to intestinal parasites. And it's a constant problem if you keep goats. They're always getting sick and you're having to deworm them and all this stuff. But if you graze a bunch of chickens with your goats, the chickens will pick through the goat poo and eat all the little parasites and interrupt the life cycle of the parasites to keep the goats from getting so sick with parasites. So you have these two animals taking care of each other's ecosystem, interrupting the parasite life cycle, and you'll have healthier goats because you have the chickens in there. Also, the chickens or the goats will defend the chickens from predators. They will get along, and your goats will keep your chickens safe. It's very cool. And so then out of that little system, you get eggs, 2 kinds of meat, milk, and fertilizer in one operation. So if some of you guys are feeling advanced and have the space, you can try the dairy goat chicken co-pasturing method. And that's most of the segment. Let's just a few more things on getting chicks. If you can get them, they're really hard to get right now because of this big fake bird flu stupidity, and they're killing all the chicks and stopping shipments. But if you can get them, I would order, at least for your first time, just get female chicks. You can get them sexed. Get females, and I like to order from Murray McMurray Hatchery. They're a little more expensive, but the quality is really good. Another option, if you can do it, is to incubate eggs and hatch them. This is super cool process to watch. I put a video of ours up on Twitter. We just did a batch of them. I got another batch cooking right now. Highly recommend it. I'll have some links to gear that I would recommend. The only thing, if you're going to hatch them, you're going to get a straight run of chicks, so it's going to be males and females, and you're going to have a plan to deal with the roosters, because you can only really have one rooster in most cases. Sometimes they'll get along if they have enough space, but they'll probably kill each other. So you either need to eat the roosters or sell them to somebody.
We had several roosters, and they would fight all the time and kill you, but it was very entertaining. I see why cockfights are a thing.
Oh, yeah. It's hilarious.
It's great.
It's great.
It's great. And I'm not even sure I'm opposed to cockfighting.
Well, here's the thing. They want to fight.
They love it.
They love it. That's like half of their reason
and
for
B,
existing.
If we're going to eat them, I always feel weird when people have a strong ethical argument against something about an animal they're going to kill and eat anyway.
Yeah.
Because, and I get that you should treat them humanely and stuff. I don't like factory farming, yada, 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 yes. But cockfighting, right? The roosters live for it. They love to do it.
They do. You can tell they love it.
It's their favorite thing that's ever happened. They'll
fight any rooster they come across. They will run and fight it.
They run right at each other. They love it so much, and it's so entertaining to watch. They do like cool Mortal Kombat moves where they like half fly and kick at each other.
Oh yeah,
in the air, like bicycle kicking.
Yeah,
it's great. I'm not like a Michael Vick apologist who's like hooray dogfighting.
I think dogs are different because you have to abuse the dogs to make them mean enough to fight.
That's right.
You don't have to do anything to a rooster to make it fight. They come out fighting. I've got my 2-week-old chicks are already fighting each other.
Yeah, like dogs, they'll fight a little bit to establish dominance in the pack, but like they don't just want to kill one another usually. Right. Mm-hmm. You have to make them upset so you have to abuse. But chickens, roosters are they want to kill each other.
Yeah, they do.
It's just in their nature, right? And so maybe that's a YouTube channel for us in the future to monetize this podcast.
We're going to figure out how to make money somehow.
Which no one contributes to at all.
Some of them do.
And if you don't start, we're going to have to resort to illegal animal fighting. That's not something I want to do. It's not something Smokestack wants to do, but we have the resources, we have the space, we have the chickens.
Yeah.
We could, and people would watch. Don't kid yourself. If the Gladiator games came back, you would go. It would be awesome, and you all know it. It would be insanely entertaining. It'd be like the MMA times 1,000,000. I mean, how cool would it be to watch a guy fight a lion?
I mean, it
He's
would
got
be
like a
cool.
spear. It would be amazing.
If he's there of his own free will, I would maybe watch it. If he was like a prisoner, I would not.
I would go watch it if he was a prisoner. I don't feel proud of that.
Man. You're just being
It's
honest.
not something that I think is good.
Yeah.
I would feel bad about doing it, but it would be the greatest content ever produced. Nothing we've made since the advent of television has come close to the entertainment value of the Coliseum. It's nothing. Right? And we have like all the CGI in the world cannot make up for like flooding the Coliseum and putting 5 Ethiopians on a boat and having a bunch of Italians shoot fire arrows at them. That's
Preach.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's the greatest content ever that's ever happened.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And so I'm just saying that that might be a way that we in future make this viable. If we're going to continue to help people, as I know that we do, we have to figure out how to fund this operation somehow. So people can either join the St. Nicholas Project, which, again, you're not promised anything. It's just like a Patreon. You just give us money because you like us. And sometimes you get something in return.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or you can buy us a coffee on the Buy Us a Coffee thing.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Buy me a coffee?
The Buy Me a Coffee thing, yeah.
All these things are linked in the show notes at mapsock.org.
And if you don't, then chickens are going to start dying.
They might.
And it's really not even on our hands at that time. You know? And we will start with chickens, but eventually I'm going to find Michael Vick if we have to. You know? And fight other animals.
Hey,
maybe we'll start by just making the dog fight the chicken.
Speaking of dying chickens, there's some important information here that people need to know if they're going to hatch chickens. You need to be careful where you get your hatching eggs.
You're trying to steer the conversation away from dogfighting.
I'm just trying to finish the segment. We're almost there. We're almost there. So if you're going to hatch chickens, you need to make sure you know where your eggs came from, and you need to know that the varieties of rooster and hen are compatible, because not all chickens can breed with all other chickens. You have to make. Is
that so? I did not know that.
It is, and so if they're incompatible, you will get a very high failure rate, or it will be a horror show on hatching day. Like you will have chicks born inside out, with their guts all.
Whoa!
It's not good. It's really gross and bad, and it will scare your children. So there are charts and there's information out there about which breeds of chickens can be interbred successfully. In my case, I have Buff Orpingtons and Black Australorps. So I now have something I'm going to call a Buffalorp, which is half and half. But they're close enough, closely enough related to where they can interbreed, and I'm having really good hatching rates. But if you don't just go to somebody's, because here's chicken mommies are a mess with this. They'll buy 60 different types of chickens. And then they'll get one rooster, and then they're like, "Oh, I want to hatch chicks." And then they'll just find all the eggs they can't. They'll just pick some eggs, and they'll hatch them, and they have no idea what the matchup is. And then the chicks end up looking like the little baby in a racer head, and it's really bad. It's really ugly. So if you're gonna hatch eggs, just make sure you know where the eggs came from. If it's a single variety flock, that's your safest bet. Okay? Just word of caution. I don't want you guys to have a bad experience. And then finally keeping them safe from hawks. Whatever enclosure, if it's open to the sky, the chickens need something they can hide in. Bushes, something.
That could be another route of monetization.
Is a hawk cam?
Well, no. I've been studying other internet personalities and how they monetize things.
Yeah.
You know, I like watching the Good Mythical Morning guys, the Rhett and Link fellows, and they have this thing called Will It X, like Will It Breakfast. Mm-hmm. And you see, like, will these two mashups of food be a good breakfast? And they'll vote up or down, right? Or will it pizza? And they'll like put Pop-Tarts on a pizza. Does that pizza? You know, and they've been doing that for years, and like it's their bread and butter. It's like dumb foods. We could have Will It Chicken. Random chicken breeds, right? And put them together, and then we have a cam on the eggs when they're hatching and see if they come out deformed or not.
So it could either be a cute chick or a hideous,
or like an Eldritchian horror,
a hideous pile of guts with feet sticking out of it.
Yes.
writhing around as
And then
it dies.
and then we have like really soft music over the guts and feet, like doo 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 doo, and then a big X that goes. Well, not chicken. Right, and then it'll also be for science. I mean, we'd be documenting which breeds chicken or not.
I don't want to do this. I don't want to.
I mean, that is science, really.
I don't want to.
You know. But that could be our YouTube channel because people will not donate to this thing, so we have to resort continually to base ourselves.
That sounds like something Isaac Newton would do.
And probably get paid for.
Yeah.
You know. Will it chicken? I don't know. We have to figure out something because everyone I guess maybe all our listeners are poor. That could be. I don't know.
Maybe.
I mean, we don't cater to like the highest income crowd in America for sure.
Yeah.
You know, they're all listening to like NPR and like how you can feel good about exploiting black people by pretending you're not doing so in a soft NPR voice. And it's okay because if you move into their neighborhood and you make their housing prices go up, that's it. And they just all talk like that. And as long as you talk soft,
Yeah.
it's really everything you do is okay. As long as you talk soft. I've learned that that's the secret of life.
Mm.
And so our Will It Chicken dogfighting channel will have very soft voices and lots of pleasant music.
I can do the NPR thing where I speak.
You can, and then like
into
just
the
you'll
microphone.
be narrating two dogs mauling each other apart.
The combination of a barred rocks and a red leghorn has turned out to be a pile of guts.
We could do that with dog. You know, there's some dog combinations that probably don't do well. You know, you put a Great Dane,
And yet we have
like a Pomeranian.
teacup poodles, you know.
Yeah,
That shouldn't be. But it lived.
that's true. That's true.
All right, well let's talk to old Godward.
Okay, you know, while we're at it, I don't buy the whole thing about dogs.
What thing about dogs?
I don't buy how they came about. Like the whole domesticated wolf thing.
Oh, you don't think so?
I mean, maybe, but it's just so strange. The genetic diversity of the dog that does not show up in the wolf. Right? Like if and I'm not going to go into a whole segment about this, but if these little, like a dog can be bred to all these different things, like a Pomeranian or a Great Dane, and then that should show up in the wolf population too, but wolf genetics are pretty stable. I don't know. I don't buy it. Something's off there.
Poor Godward's listening to this episode right now like, when are they going to start my segment?
Well, yeah, well.
And we're talking about dogs.
Well, his segment, rightfully, his segment is preceded by duck rape, dog fighting, Will It Chicken gutsing. And that's what he deserves.
We did have a lot
He's
of
a good
important
person.
things to get processed through the pipe before we got to him.
Yeah, we did. And we had a good discussion. We talked about my early 20s plan to manufacture, which did not work, to manufacture fake cuneiform and get that into a museum, which didn't pan out. We talked about all sorts of things.
I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be great.
So it's going to be a good one. You may have to clip off like the first minute or so when we have connection problems. I don't know.
I'll take
But
care of it.
connection problems are bread and butter of this show.
It's true.
Connection problems, sniffling and coughing
Yeah.
is like our, that's our dubstep. Before the drop.
All right. Here we go.
Woo! All right, yeah, here we go. Okay. Hello. I'm here with Godward, host of the Godward podcast. How are you doing, sir?
Excellent, man. It's such an honor. I'm like the #1 super fan of the Mystical American Patriot Society. Just can't wait to contribute.
Well, that's awesome. I don't know how many super fans we have. Probably a dozen super fans, maybe more. I don't know.
Council of Elders.
The Council of Elders. That's right. Yeah. So for this show, I haven't really prepared because I've been extreme traveling this week.
Nice. That's cool. I mean, I have loads of stuff. I mean, I could almost interview you, if we want to do it that way.
Let's do that. I have been in the. Well, you're on the East Coast, correct?
Yeah.
I'm on the West Coast. So this is this week's. This is like a Trans America show, crossing the whole continent. Because I've been in San Francisco the whole week. This is my last day here. Flying back home tomorrow. But I've just been running around crazy. But people requested that we do this show with you many times, so I thought this would be a good time to do it.
Did you get to see some of the there's poop in the streets, I've heard, in San Francisco, and needles and stuff?
Well, that's, as you say that, outside my hotel room, someone is screaming belligerently at someone else.
Yeah.
But to be honest, it's fairly clean. I haven't seen any poop at all. I've seen no Ukrainian flags.
Okay.
Which is surprising. There doesn't seem to be any support for Ukraine in San Francisco. The homelessness is only slightly worse, apparently, to me, than it was when I was here last. It's always been, California is always going to have some homeless because it's never rains. It's the best place in America to be homeless. The whole problem with California at the moment is that people are on the wrong drugs. Like in the 60s and 70s, in the golden age of California, everyone was on like acid and LSD, the psychedelic movement, the hippies, and then and now they're on like methamphetamines and stuff.
Yeah, see, I don't mess around with the post-60s stuff at all. It just seems chemical, doesn't it? It seems too technological.
Yeah, it was. So I don't know. I think I also there's also not. I notice this every time I come to San Francisco. There actually isn't a lot of big gay presence here, at least not visible. Like I think this is another side where everything is sort of screwed and backwards to what people perceive from the internet. Is that there are gay people here, but it isn't like a in your face scene, whereas it is in other cities that you think of are less as being less gay.
Yeah, that's it. This is the kind of thing that I think is spinning people's heads lately, is that there are these kind of talking points like, San Francisco is gay, but then it turns out like it might be Houston, Texas is even gayer, but
Houston, Texas is way gayer.
Yeah. You don't hear that though.
Houston, Texas is maybe the gayest city in America, but people have a vision of it as being like this Republican. And in fact, it is, because Republicans are the gay ones. Yeah. Right. Like all of the gays in Houston, Texas vote Republican.
Because they're faker. And as you point out very often on the show, that these things are inseparable.
Yeah. The fake always goes with the gay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think today we're going to talk about, you want to talk about emojis. You have an emoji theory.
Yeah. The thing is, I was just reading earlier today. Well, this, how it does. Like if you have one of these phones that goes in your pocket, you can, you'll just be typing, and then there's these little emoji things. I'm, by the way, 44 years old, so I'm like trying to keep up with the kids. Mm-hmm. But they dropped a new one recently, and I noticed this in my, emoji archive, and it's a little dotted line face with the kind of flat affect face. And so I had to look it up. So I Googled dotted line face emoji meaning. Uh-huh. And I was surprised to find out that there's kind of a hub where they define each of the emojis.
Oh yeah. There's like an emoji central.
Yeah. So let me just read you like half a paragraph about the emoji meaning of the dotted line face. It says, a muted yellow neutral face with a dotted or dashed outline. An established comic book trope, dotted lines around a character can represent someone that is invisible or hidden. It can also represent smallness, submissiveness, isolation, and depression. This emoji has the same expression as neutral face. And then it says dotted line face was approved as part of Unicode 14.0 in 2021 and added to Emoji 14.0 in 2021. And to me, this is just like, begs the question, who is who is generating this? Like, this is fascinating. You know, these are the kinds of like the cabal is doing this. You know what I mean? I don't know who it is exactly, but someone decided to make a little face that is going to be universally used by everyone who has a phone. And then they write this stuff about it that sounds very much like kind of esoteric, kind of hermetic, astrology or something. And they just plant these seeds in our brain, and then you can't next week I'll find myself like writing a message to my mother or something, and I'm gonna use dotted line face. And now this is in my consciousness, and it's like, I guess, well, I don't know. I mean, have you ever reflected on the sort of ubiquity now of the not just of the emojis, but the thoughts that correspond to the emojis and the way that these now are like in us?
Yeah, it's a controlling of language by adding new words, new symbols into the. They're not words so much, but they are used in text, and if you can control the available forms of expression, you constrain people's thoughts. That's true. I'm not sure if it's conscious or not, but that is like so much of people's language are thoughts. People don't even realize how like constrained their thinking is by the words they're able to use. Yes. Like a big one is just subject noun. I mean, you ever thought about why we need a subject noun language?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
I mean, like the subject and the noun structure makes you think of things as objective, subjective. There's really no reason to do that, though. You could have an entirely subjective or entirely subjective or entirely objective language. Like you could have the whole language could not have nouns. There's no reason to have nouns, right?
That's yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, in the like Parmenidean oneness, you could just describe things happening.
Right. You could say because on one level, like everything is atoms doing a various dance, right? Everything is atoms in a various configuration. So instead of saying the cat is on the mat, you could say there's a catting on the matting, and everything could be like a verb, a happening. Or you could reverse it and treat everything as though it's a noun. Like so the structure of noun verb, while it seems completely like incontroversial, like of course that's what it would be, just because that's how we've always grown. There's no reason that you couldn't have a language that did not have that at all, and then that would frame the way you thought about the world completely differently. And so when you introduce these things like emojis and that gives you what you can think about. And so now if you have an invisible face, you will begin to feel more invisible just by the fact that you can use it. Right. And so the more you use it, the more you'll feel invisible, and the more, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. And the other thing is like emojis encode this whole kind of register of emotion, like in ways that I think, like sort of standard text in a book maybe doesn't necessarily. I mean, it's almost like it's teaching us what's acceptable to feel or not feel. And they're going to, of course, just as you said, like they're going to, sort of divide our consciousness into, these 400 different categories basically. And then say, essentially like this is the range of feelings you're sort of sanely permitted to feel. And if you get outside of that range, like if you feel something and there's not an emoji for it, then I mean, you can just see that showing up in like the DSM-7 as like an early warning
mental
sign.
Illness.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, and I mean, to some degree that's sort of valid, I guess, because mental illness, like I talked about on the last show, bang the earth is round. Mental illness doesn't mean you're factually wrong so much as it means you're not fitting in with society.
Yeah.
And if you define it that way, which, I guess is a valid way to define it when you think about it, then being outside the parameters that society sets up is de facto
being mentally quote unquote ill. Although you have no recourse then for if your society is ill of how to even think about your problem. Because I think my emotions never fit into I've struggled to have words for them all the time.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's well, it's interesting because as I said, because I'm older, I actually remember kind of the origin of, I guess, like the popular internet anyway. And initially it was just people using the like the brackets and the colon to make smiley faces. And the range of it was very narrow at the time. And then they introduced like the pictorial, the sort of hieroglyphic images. And then what they've done is they've kind of like, initially it was just happy, sad, smile, whatever. And then they've refined it. So now you've got more categories. But yeah, I still think it does amount to like kind of policing what you can feel or think and something like that. And recently, by the way, Sumo, in one of your episodes, you were talking about how you kind of have to like commit and just let them call you crazy. And I actually, since I'm interviewing you, I do want to ask you more about that, because I think it's a tremendously difficult thing for people who have like, like families and friends and neighborhood acquaintances and stuff to like do the thing where you just kind of like give up everything and follow Jesus, because it's alienating. Like it isolates. And so instead it's like you're kind of required to keep participating in the delusion, at least with one of your feet. And then I suppose the other foot can be in the like, is space even real camp.
Oh, it's very difficult. In fact, it's borders on impossible. I mean, it's attempting to do that has in many ways ruined my life over and over again in big ways, and it's, which I guess is the only thing you can actually expect. I mean, none of the people in the Bible that followed Jesus made it out alive, with the exception of John, who was cast away to an island.
Yeah.
So it doesn't actually like doing that's why no one does it. It's like Kierkegaard said,
right.
Christians are all liars. We know very well what the Bible says. We just refuse to do it because we know what it would mean. We pretend it's all this complex stuff to understand. It's like, no, Jesus said pretty plainly like what you're supposed to do and not do, but doing so makes you incompatible with the world, and like actually trying to do it. And I think you try it, and then you run up against your limit, and then you tap out for a while, and then maybe you try again in the future. And I think maybe that's okay. That I think that's sort of the theme of my blog, which I haven't written in like a month, which was holy is he who wrestles. Like you're wrestling with God, and occasionally you have to tap out for a while because it just becomes too much. And I've even told God that before. I've been like, it's too much. I give up for now. Call it off. Let's try again later. Mm-hmm. And surprisingly, one of the times that happened to me, I went out, because I try to do the thing when I really need to talk to God. I try to do the thing that Jesus did, which is where I go up on the mountain, the nearest mountain to me, and pray. Mm-hmm. And I was like, look, give me some sort of sign here, because I need something. I can't go on anymore doing this thing. I got to have an out. Give me a sign, And so I came back down the mountain. No sign. Finally get to the car again. And on like a road sign on the back of it is a name tag. And I go up to it and look, and it's like, hello, my name is Agape.
Wow.
It's written on there in Sharpie. So it's like, hello, my name is Universal Love, which was unconditional love. It's actually on a sign. Like I asked for a sign, and it's actually on a sign. Wow. So I don't know. I guess maybe that's something, or maybe that's me being schizophrenic and seeing faces in toast.
Right. Yeah. And there's always that. I mean,
you can never know. You can never know.
Yeah. Yeah. But see, one of the things that frustrates me is that people will try to, it's almost like people will tolerate a kind of full blown, almost like schizotypal, like weirdo who's always seeing license plates that mean something, because that guy's crazy. Like they just they can categorize that, but what they want is they want you to be steady, and it's like that's not really how consciousness, I think, is. Like a lot of the meditative techniques will tell you, to like sort of go back and forth. Like the in breath is holding and the out breath is releasing, and like mentally this means be attached and then like let go of your attachments. And so it's practice in kind of doing it both ways. But I find that like at least, like for example, the podcast that I do, I have to keep it kind of no fun, because like if I have too much fun, it'll come off as like a manic episode, because I've established a tone. And then if you deviate from the tone, people are like, whoa, what, is he off his meds or something? And so people, you're only given sort of a narrow range for your persona or your personality or something. And this is even true by like, people, maybe even especially by people you're close with. Like, I try to give people the green light in my life, like, invite them to talk about the strange stuff sometimes, because I feel like there's gotta be, everyone wakes up at 3 a.m. sometimes. Don't they sometimes wonder if the universe has an edge or whatever? I mean, that seems like that's a universal thing. But then in kind of the day-to-day life, like in the world where you're supposed to, have a job and put on a shirt and stuff, like you're not, that's not an acceptable topic for conversation. Instead, it has to be like, whatever it comes from the media, essentially, like whatever is trending on Twitter or whatever is on CNN. And this is why I stopped watching the news, and I just like get my news from your podcast basically at this point.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if that's good or bad. I should probably not be anyone's Tom Brokaw, but to what you said, my whole life people have tried. I don't know, man.
I feel a lot better.
That's good. Yeah, that's what we aim for. But to what you said, my whole life people have tried to put me on medication. I mean, my entire life people have suggested, family members close, because they say that they'll be like, you're bipolar, or you're depressed, or you are maybe schizophrenic or something. And I don't know, maybe I am bipolar, but to me, like, to me, that's no different than just saying you feel strongly or you love intensely.
Yeah.
Like, to me, if you actually love someone or something, and a bad thing happens or might happen, then you will swing very wildly. And then when things are good, like, I don't understand how you can be steady in life.
Yeah, I mean, it's not.
Life isn't steady.
Like, and it doesn't even take an outward. This is to me the most interesting thing, is it doesn't even take an outward, like, like a catalyst. It can just be the spirit moves you sometimes. Like, I remember when I was growing up, like, sometimes my mother would just like kind of break into dance and song in the kitchen. And like, I mean, when you're 6, you just go like, I guess mom's a little crazy sometimes, and it's cool. And like, then I take that on, and it's like, okay, now I'm going to grow up and sing and dance sometimes. But then what you find is that like, you kind of have to keep it in the kitchen. You can only do it when nobody else is home. And it's like, I don't know, that it just seems like part of the, again, not to blow smoke up your butt all the time, but like part of the reason I love your show is that it's fun. And it feels to me like we live increasingly in a time where it's like, it's almost illegal to have, like, you can only have a kind of approved sort of fun, on, government surveilled apps that are sort of all pre-programmed to watch out for the wrong kind of fun. And I mean, for me, like for me, the most fun has always been just talking to people, kind of what we used to call shooting the shit, and like asking one too many questions, or like even kind of like my best friend and I used to have this habit of kind of escalation in the conversation, where it would be a kind of like a what if game, but like always taking it just one or two notches beyond what I guess like normal people would be able to tolerate. And of course, that's where the humor is, because we both knew that we're just saying things like everyone, the feds who are listening can relax. It's just talk around the campfire. But yeah, we live in a time where that is not very widely understood anymore. And I don't know, maybe it is a function of being more sort of constrained by the digital, and it's harder to find the campfires anymore.
Yeah, people. We know there's that great. I don't know. Did you ever watch Firefly?
No.
Oh, it was a great show. It got canceled by Fox, like everything good. In the first season, I'm still bitter about that. It went off in 2002, but despite it being 20 years ago, there were some great lines in there, and there was one where the captain was being both seduced and tricked by a prostitute. And at the end of the show, she actually had to come clean about what she had done. He had this great line. He said, "I've seen you without your clothes on, but I never thought I'd see you naked."
Ooh, yeah, that's a good line.
And people, this is what, like, people, to actually be yourself and to express like what you're feeling, and like whether it's joy or sadness, is a more naked position than actually just parading around without clothes. Like the Pride Parade is sort of repulsive to me because there's no actual intimacy in it. It's just
people, all performance.
Yeah, it's just people being sort of lewd without, like, you don't know. None of those people are actually showing you anything about who they are. And that's it's another mask on top of a mask on top of a mask. It's like they've adopted a pre-defined identity. Like, it's not even that they're gay; it's that they've taken on this identity that's just prepackaged. And here you go, and you can pick that one off the shelf, or you can pick like nerdy guy off the shelf, or you can pick emo girl off the shelf, and everyone falls into these. It falls into these roles that aren't them. And people know, like, society's structured to like, okay, that person is a guy that rides a skateboard. Okay. And that guy over there is a middle-aged man that vapes. Got it. And also, you understand like those things. But like when you break off those scripts, people get very uncomfortable in they don't know how to respond. And actually being who you actually are is not only not okay for most people, it is actively attacked.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that you know your T.S. Eliot too, and that's the "Do I dare disturb the universe" like anxiety that drives that whole Prufrock poem, where he just, it's like, he's pinned and wriggling on the wall, and they've already kind of defined him as he shows up at the party. And so like when it gets to that point, all you can do, like, there's nothing you can do, right? It's like the most daring move you can make is to roll your trousers or part your hair a certain way or something. And these are, extreme, superficial, essentially inconsequential, like little idiosyncrasies. They aren't the self itself. And yeah, I think to get to that requires spending time with people and seeing their range. That's why I love podcasts in general, is like you get to know a person more than just the avatar and the kind of one-liner that they define themselves with. But yeah.
And well, I used to get around this. Like, I would always go to if I was at a party or some sort of convention, I would bring up some sort of horrible joke or something, just to break through that, which is the purpose of. That's the real reason censorship is because has grown so much, is that people have an intolerability to actually relating to other people and giving up on the masks.
Yeah,
that to a degree that's not been there, at least in my lifetime. Maybe it wasn't some part in the past, but like I don't know. I was at this thing not too long ago. And the way I broke the ice is I would tell people about my idea for historical themed escape rooms.
Uh-huh.
Like it would be, an escape room.
Yeah.
Like, but what if we did one and it was like Auschwitz? And you had to, or like Anne Frank's attic, and you had to like sit there and figure out how to get there before the night. You could do so many of them, like a Trail of Tears.
Yeah, actually, yeah. Uh-huh. Yep.
It would be educational at the same time. See, and then you could. There's all these great ways you could play it, and then everyone starts with going, "That's horrible," but eventually, they will, if they're at all have any real person in them, they sort of warm up and
Yeah, it's like, this is how you pass the Turing test, and increasingly
exactly.
people can't, right? Like, because I think part of it is that there is this feedback loop too, where people end up kind of self-censoring and not trying the joke. I think a lot of people have noticed that like comedy is pretty much dead since 2015 or 2016 because because everything got suffused with kind of like the layer of politics or something, and then somebody always finds it offensive. But a lot, it's not illegal to tell those jokes about the escape room and Anne Frank or whatever. It's just
Anne Frank was fake, by the way. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, I know. Actually, okay. But speaking of fake, can we also talk about that Nag Hammadi stuff before I forget?
Yeah. Let's go Nag Hammadi.
Okay, so I spent like an hour today kind of reading about this just because just to give you like a brief background of kind of why I'm here, which is always interesting on a podcast. It's like, how did you find your way here? And by the way, you guys just hold the course. Just go for like 5 more years and you'll be CNN's number one enemy. So, like,
we'll see.
I know this because I tend to find, not to brag, but like I do tend to be 3 to 5 years ahead of the curve here. And so anyway, back when I was like in my 20s, I was a young truth seeker. This was not long after 9/11. I had no idea about all of the stuff that people would like sort of later start talking about in terms of I don't know, whatever, red pilly kinds of things. But I did see in a bookstore this Nag Hammadi library, which is the collection of texts that was discovered in Egypt in, I think, 1945 or 1947. Yeah. And so I read it very carefully at the time because in my 20s, I was kind of like an atheist, not quite a fedora, but like, I was interested in Buddhism. It was a pretty typical 20s. I did.
Well, you came up in the age of new atheism.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
and I did. I think that is my personal crusade against both what new atheism was trying to do to me and what I saw it do to people around me is that would be my origin story.
Yeah, because that's perfect.
The entire world was trying to tell me when I was growing up, like through when I was 16 to like 20, 30 maybe. The entire world was trying to tell me that everything was meaningless. People were animals that didn't matter. Here at random chance, and there was no right and wrong. And I was just like, and so many people were like going, yeah, I guess that makes sense. And then I just, that I didn't know what to do. And like, you would go ask people for help and no one had help. So you just had to make up your own way through the world.
This is so important too, because it's like you do detect, it's like the lies are so loud that it's conspicuous. And so you start going like, why are they all saying this so loudly and without like, why is there not anyone? So the same thing happened to me. I was kind of like, I grew up like Methodist, which, I don't mean to trash them, but it's basically just like civic religion kind of.
Oh, like, yeah. I used to say the only Methodist church that illuminates is a burning one. Which is something I stole from somebody else from long ago.
That's good.
But,
and like,
and I mean that with love. I actually love the Methodists, but they have gotten a little weird.
Well, I've often said like the one cool thing about the Methodist Church is that they send you off with nothing but good vibes. Like there's no bad, mojo when you leave, but like, of course you leave because it's just this like dead institution. And so I had a hunger for, it was just obvious to me, there has to be more to what's going on here.
Mhm.
And so anyway, yeah, I read my Bible for the first time when I was like 20 and kind of got, just, I don't know, it was, whatever. I had reasons, but I kind of just dismissed it. And then I got, like I said, into all this other stuff. But when I found the Nag Hammadi, I was like 23, 24 years old, and I read it very closely. And I remember there was a preface or introduction by this guy, James Robinson. I guess he was around at the time or shortly after that they were discovering it. And then 20 or 30 years later, he was the guy who kind of like assembled the crew that was going to translate it and everything. So James Robinson's narrative of how these texts were discovered is like the canonical story of the discovery of the Nag Hammadi text. And there really isn't another one. So you can read, academic articles about this, like questioning the authenticity of, or as we would say, the fakeness or
Right,
not
right.
of the discovery. So I was reviewing it again today, and it's an awesome story. And if you just Google, discovery Nag Hammadi text, there's a good thing on Wikipedia that kind of summarizes this. But there's, it's this shepherd guy or something. He's like a farmer, and he's out in the hot Egyptian sun at, midday, taking his sheep around or something. And he stumbles into this cave, and in the cave, he finds these big earthenware jars, and supposedly in the jars, are these texts. And the story gets way more interesting from there. There's like some blood feud. Like a couple weeks after this, he and his brothers went and murdered somebody who murdered their dad, and they like disemboweled him and took his heart out. Like, it is wild stuff.
It also involves the
Cannibalism.
jinn, if I remember correctly.
There's a jinn involved.
Yeah, which
and-
is a demon, by the way. So it makes you cast out like, oh, these scriptures were found by the help of a demon. Ah.
Exactly.
Right.
And apparently, and I think in even Robinson's telling, there are either 2 people present or 7 or 8 and all these different things. There's a corpse, there's a bit of charcoal. So so that's the sort of rough outline of the story. And then the texts themselves are largely, sort of, they're kind of crypto, half Gnostic, sort of Jewish. Some of it's even, there's like copies of Plato's Republic mixed in. I mean, it's some really weird, esoteric, like hermetic kinds of things.
Mhm.
And I guess it seems to me now, like me 2015 and after, should have considered right away, but never did. Like, are these real texts? I mean, or is it possible that they just kind of like, this seems possible to me that they just like wrote them on some papyrus and then kind of like artificially aged them, because it's like, and then there's all these notes on the Wikipedia page that say like, oh, nothing survived of the earthenware. And like, it's like, there's all these weird mysteries about it. And I guess given the like absolute fulcrum of history, that 1947 was, it's like, is this a writing project that, the Illuminati sort of designed and then dropped on us over the next 30 years. And then Elaine Pagels explained it to everybody. And I don't know, like, I do think some of those, the Gospel of Thomas is in there, and it's pretty interesting. And it kind of, it kind of challenges the way that you think about certain things. But then, of course, like, I wish Smokestack were here to tell me, like, turn away from the heresy, my fellow Christian.
He's good at that.
Yeah.
Well,
but, so I don't know, like, do you think it's fake? Do you think this stuff is fake and a psyop? Or
I'll tell you this. I spent a good part of the year, 2007, trying to learn Sanskrit so that I could fake and hopefully complete the lost portions of the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Awesome idea.
Now, I didn't succeed because it actually takes a long time to learn Sanskrit, and there's very little, precious little material on how to do so, and there's really no one around to check your work to see if you're doing it right. But my goal was, I thought, the Epic of Gilgamesh is great, but there's all these missing parts. What if I could like write the rest of it in Sanskrit on some tablets and like make them look old and hide them in their under Mount Sinai or something.
Yeah.
And then
I
stumble
thought you were
upon
gonna say
them.
Western New York, but yeah.
Yeah, then stumble upon them, and then be like, "Oh, look, I found the rest of them." And then they would be that I would finish the story, and it was going to be great. You know, he was going to like do a thing where he did like a narcissist thing where he fell in love with his self, and that made him fall. And then, but he regained after he denied a version of the side. Like I was gonna make it like, oh, the Greeks got their myth from this guy. See,
Yeah.
And so if I had the ability and a lot of money to have done that at 24, I would have probably done that. So it's not, I am the sort of person who would have faked ancient texts. So it's not outside that at all implausible that someone would fake ancient texts. I mean, I know people that have faked Bigfoot casts of feet just to see if it would get in the local news, if they made a Bigfoot print and see if they could. And the weird thing about that is though, that they would make the fake prints and then like a bunch of people would start seeing Bigfoot and reporting it in other places.
Yeah.
It was almost like they conjured Bigfoot. It's very strange. But I could certainly believe that they might be fake. Now, I do have some sympathy for the Gospel of Thomas, which I believe was found in that bundle.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty good. And so is Philip. The Philip Gospel is interesting. But
I still say like because it has the parable, it has the story of Jesus's childhood, the infancy of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a story in there that it shares with the Quran, which is just so on point for what Jesus would do as a child. I even if it seems like it should be true, even if it's not a canonical thing, like that he would make little birds out of clay and then breathe air on them and they would come to life. Yeah. That was a perfect miracle of a child Jesus would do. Like that's like, of course that's what he would do. So I have some sympathy for it. And so it's probably like many things, a mixture of both. It probably is some degree of old texts that have been garbled around on purpose and messed with, and then some invention. It would be my suspicion. But
yeah, well, I mean, one of the reasons that it matters so much to me is like I have kind of arrived at this perspective where like the question of whether history is fake is almost it's like, of course it's fake. Like,
of course it's fake.
Because I mean, well, like technically it has to be fake because you have this like infinite array of incidents that have happened through history and you have to edit in order to tell, a manageable story. And so like,
it has to be fake. There's no way it can't be fake because you have to, like you said, there's an infinite amount of facts and you pull out a narrative from that, and you could have pulled out infinitely many different narratives.
Exactly. And so like what my thinking is that like when it comes to, for example, like the one in the Gospel of Thomas that I remember is I think it's the shortest one in there. It just says, Jesus said, "Be passers-by." And that's the kind of thing that like, well, because, okay, so for me, it's like, I'm a Christian. I feel like I have to, you kind of have to build an like mental picture of Jesus, not a physical picture, but like of his character, and then try to like kind of aim at that or worship that or venerate that. Mm-hmm. But if you just add like 2 words to it, like "be passers-by," it does kind of change the tenor of everything that is established as canonical. Like it's plausible he could have said those words in addition to everything he said in the canonical Gospels, and then it's like, well, what does that mean? Like it kind of changes his vibe just ever so slightly, but like theoretically a change like that would even be significant in terms of, theology, because you can't just, although I don't know, I know there are some people who say like just worship the name or something and you almost don't have to know what it is. But to me,
that's a very Hindu idea.
And this goes, yeah.
Like you just chant the name of Krishna and you don't have to know what Krishna, you just the name. It's a very, that's an idea that comes to us out of like a very Eastern Hindu spirituality, which I don't agree with. I think you have to have some sort of knowledge about what the name is saying for it to matter. Otherwise, it's just a gibberish.
Yeah, I agree. Couple of thoughts also. First of all, isn't Gilgamesh just still it's like so good? It's underappreciated even now. And I love the idea of making of I mean, it wouldn't be the same if you like wrote a novel and you said, I'm trying to amend it, but just what you said, like you have to
put it into history, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
and the thing is, if you pulled it off, other scholars in the future may doubt you, but it wouldn't matter. It would still be like, oh, this is the completed story.
Right. Well, and the other weird thing about this is that it's very likely that this is how the Bible, the Odyssey, maybe even Gilgamesh was composed the first time through, that there were like sort of multiple passes and edits and various authors all kind of contributing, and then it kind of slowly finalizes as a form. And so like, why not? Like, why don't we keep writing? Now, I know there's those lines at the end of the Bible that say like, don't ever add another word to this or you're cursed to hell or whatever. But for stories,
I think that was just John talking about his own book.
Oh yeah, I mean that's possible too, sure. Because I mean that's how he would have thought of it, I suppose. But yeah, so that question about like history, historiography, and kind of like hermeneutics, like that's another interesting word. You know, you basically need an interpretive method for understanding like the biblical texts or historical texts. And of course, that's the word that comes from Hermes, like the messenger of the gods. It's like in a sense, it has to be revealed to you.
I always thought that was a bit ironic, like when especially like Southern Baptists would talk about hermeneutics or hermeneutics.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about like Hermes Trismegistus.
It's very like
the great alchemist and worshiper of the. It's just you can't get away from that stuff. You know, it's like one of my favorite quotes is that paganism is the second Old Testament.
Ooh, I like it. Yeah, because
you can never that stuff is always there. But I forget what you were asking. I'm sorry.
No, I do too. I'm just talking about how history is fake, and then like, you know, basically, I mean, but in a very real, like to me, almost like visceral kind of a way. We do need narratives. I mean, this was, I think, even intuitively when I was young, like the graduate school work I did was in literature. And I think it was because I, you know, felt this crisis of meaning and kind of wanted to no, what's the story here? Like, what am I doing here? We have to have some kind of an explanation for it. And the kind of, I guess like the, you know, mind blower to me was when I realized that that story has to come first, and then you can examine all of the sources and you can read your Sallust and Livy and Plutarch and whatever. But without the narrative in place first, there's really almost technically no way to make sense of all of the points of data that we have, you know, that sort of from the ancient world or from, you know, whenever. Even like it's hilarious to me that this includes, like, you know, well into the 20th century, a story like James Robinson's, you know, the discovery of the Nag Hammadi text. It's like, well, is that true though? I mean, you know, one of the papers I read about it said that it seems to be like a little allegory about how we can't let these savages be the one, you know, the curators of these sacred texts, but that they have to be taken to Cairo and given to the museum and, you know, read and interpreted by like formal scholars, you know. And it's a very kind of Pharisaic, credentialist, like moral to the story, if you take it that way, I guess.
Yeah, you can't get away. This is why I think, to go back to your first point, the greatest technology or the most important, I don't know about greatest, but the most impactful and important technology to come out of the computer revolution is stuff like emojis. It is the way in which language has been altered is much more profound than any of the processors or the internet protocols or anything, because that shapes the narratives that we're able to tell. And that is that's like the idea that even the idea of the narrative entering the lexicon of like, what's the narrative? We have to shape the narrative. That is a huge win for truth, because people understanding like, oh, we are just telling narratives. Like, I think that like Homo sapien, meaning like wise man or whatever, or like a tool user. I think actually you should have a Latin for like, what we really are is like the storytelling man. Like that's the main thing that we do.
Yeah.
We invent stories about our lives all the time, and many of them are not true. Like they don't pan out, but they nonetheless make us depressed or scared or angry or whatever because they're
happy. Yeah.
Or happy. And so that's always been that tension has always been the thing, like Gnosticism versus not Gnosticism is like, is the narrative true just because you believe it? Or is there like something outside the narrative to which the narrative should adhere that is more true? And that has been the question since the dawn of time. And people are still struggling with that. And it plays out in all these little ways, like in the Nag Hammadi and, all of these things, like even just questioning, like the New Atheists used to do, was Jesus even real? Did he even exist? And they'd be like, of course he did. And then back and forth, is he a metaphor? Is that, all this back and forth. And would it matter if he was, or would it matter if he wasn't? And so that's why I so confidently say so many times that things are fake, because I'm pointing to people that what they're actually doing is just believing a narrative, and they don't. It's so often nothing more than that, and you can change the narrative on a dime, and people do often without noticing.
You know what else is weird about that? And yes, to all of that, but is that like when I was, you probably lived through this too. You get like, I guess, like a college education back in the day. And at some point you hear about the deconstructionists and the postmodernists. And so much of that was presented to us as like, as an undoing of the narrative, or they were going to like say, like I remember the Jean-Francois Lyotard book about the postmodern condition being all about the end of grand narratives. Like, so there's nothing to unify us anymore. And this was kind of announced as the character of our age,
Right, which was itself a grand narrative.
Yes, that's what I'm going to say.
Right,
course.
exactly.
Which is like, it was this terrible psyop where, it's this kind of demoralization thing where I was a 22-year-old kid and they're like, nothing means anything. But then like in the back door, they're sneaking all of these narratives about, all the sort of crazy, the clown world stuff that has beset us since like, 2010 or something, all the gender equity stuff and transgenderism and all these kind of sort of bizarre late empire behaviors were inserted, and they became the narrative. Like this was all of a sudden the only allowable narrative. And it was by the same people who were telling us there are no narratives. And somehow they got away with it because I don't know, but there's something terribly like nefarious about that whole process. And it felt like a trick. And honestly, like, I don't know. I've heard, were you like raised knowing all this stuff? I've met a few people who say like, yeah, my grandpappy told me to beware the devil. And like, this is what the devil sounds like. And I never fell for it, but I fell for all of it really hard. And so then like the process of trying to undo it and not fall for it again, man, it's a chore sometimes.
I don't know if I was raised. I was definitely raised very religious in a very Christian household. But I think I took it
Catholic. Were you Catholic? You said
no. I was Southern Baptist.
Oh, okay.
I still sort of am. Like I tell people I'm a Southern Baptist Catholic.
Okay.
Because you never get. Like the urge to sing "Amazing Grace" never leaves you.
Right on.
Even though Catholics don't sing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can never really get out of that. But like. Certainly I was, but I think that I, for whatever reason, took it all much more to heart than other people. I think most people just were like, and I don't fault them for this. I think this is a normal way to get through life. It's just like, I do this, do that. I got the religion box checked over here. I'm this religion, and that's what I believe. Yep. And they go through life. But from a very early on, I was very struggling with these questions. I'm like, well, this is what people are saying, and is it true? And is it this or that? And I would go back and like, I guess I think my earliest struggle, which presented as a struggle of like salvation, because like I remember I first did the whole Baptist thing where you go up and accept Jesus into your heart when I was 5.
Oh, 5. That's pretty early, even in the Baptist.
Very
church.
early. Like it was frowned upon most, except that I could clearly articulate what I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, okay, I guess he knows what he's, I knew the whole story. I knew why it was there. And I felt even, and I don't think anyone, people will spin this as like, oh, well, they were brainwashing you. And then that's why you felt this way. Like, no, I felt from a young age, I felt guilt, like for what I perceived as the evil in me, even though it was manifesting in like a 5-year-old's way. But I was like, like I knew that I had the capacity to lie, and I knew that I had the capacity to take pleasure in other people's pain and all these things. And that was very intensely convicting, to the point where I could not sleep. And and this is why people have always worried about me, like me needing medication, because it was, but that's, like I said, I don't know if that's, to me, that always just felt like that's what you would do if you actually cared.
Yeah, you sound like St. Paul. Like you sound just like Romans 7. It's like they should have just given him a Xanax,
That's right. I mean, like people would try to medicate every saint, because I think if they actually, because it's an intense, and so I think and so that manifested as like this fear of like, am I saved? Like I did the thing, I went up there. And of course, the whole line of the Protestants thing that Martin Luther was struggling with, he struggled in a similar way, was okay, but am I really though? Right. Yeah. And like, how can you be sure? Right. And like, and of course, the classic Catholic answer is you can never be sure until you actually get there. But that is too anxiety provoking for a lot of people that actually take it seriously. Like, but how can I live if there's this hell thing and I don't know? And so Martin Luther had a breakdown, and just declared, well, I have to just have assurance, And I don't even think you can fault Martin Luther for it, because I felt like what he felt. I think that he went off the rails, but I understand what he was going through. And so the whole Baptist thing, particularly the Southern Baptists, they're big on like assurance, like blessed assurance, Jesus is mine, right? Mm-hmm. And I never had that growing up, because I think I got, and this was frowned upon too, everything I did was not kosher, even from a young age. But I like forced them to baptize me like 8 times.
Oh, wow.
From the time I was like 5 to the 15, because I was like, well, I'm not certain that, and I would just freak out about it. And they'd be like, no, we already did this. And that's not kosher for any group of Christianity, right? It's not a thing that it should be done. But I was like, how, and what it really was, it was manifesting as a fear of lack of salvation. But what it really was a question of like, but does God really love me though? Like beyond all this stuff, beyond all the people, beyond the earth, is when you actually get out there to whatever is the ultimate thing, is it actually love or not? And does it care about me? And that was the thing that I wrestled with, I don't know, since my earliest memory. I had a very like big vision of like, but what's beyond that and beyond that? And what is the actual end point? And does it care?
Did you get an answer?
Well, I think I did. Yeah, I think I had a few series of what I would consider mystical experiences.
Sure. Yeah, that's the answer.
Where I experienced profound and never, like agape, like unconditional, never-ending love that I think is actually real. But living that into the world is very hard, because the world resists it at every turn, including yourself. You always want to hold on to, like, if someone slights you in some way, or if you slight yourself, you don't want to like just love them, and keep on going.
Yeah.
But and so the whole world is resisting it all the time. But yeah, so that question, and then that was like I said, that was renewed in me when the New Atheist movement came up, because I think I was not so much worried about myself as I was everyone else. Like, don't go down that path of thinking there's nothing. I know what's down that path,
Mhm.
and I wanted to spare people from that. And of course I couldn't, because you can never spare people from what they want. They always
That's yeah. Although, I mean, I do think, like, I had that. Isn't it interesting? You ever look back and think it's remarkable how correct my instincts were when I was like, 18 to 22, just like my first forays into reading stuff and trying to figure things out. I remember being interested in, these kinds of questions, or like, even younger. Like, I remember watching documentaries about the pyramids when I was like 8 or 10 years old, probably, and being like, there's more to this. This,
Oh yeah.
Well, there's no way that's just a big tomb. Like, give me a break. And if you just kind of follow those threads, I mean, eventually, you find, I mean, there's books that sort of help, but ultimately, like, the picture comes together that there's things that we really don't understand very well, that kind of go beyond what the kind of like the scholar, or like the the mouthpieces of authority sort of allow us to consider.
Yeah, and my stance towards the evil empire has softened quite a bit, because over time I've realized that they are just doing what the people need. Even though it's evil, like, it's what the people want, and really it would be worse if they didn't have it. Like, giving them people these narratives where they can feel okay about their inability to love, because otherwise it would be crushing and they would not be able, like, that has been a big revelation for me. Like, oh, okay, like, evil is allowed to exist in the world because actually people would actually die if they had like unconditional love. Like, they would follow. It's like no man can see God's face and live. You can't, because you're looking into unconditional love, and that burns apart all of the things in you that aren't.
Yeah.
And so, like, I sort of understand why the evil, like, it's I tell people about it in case they're ready to get out. And so maybe I can offer them an off-ramp. But also, like, I don't have hatred or fear of the Babylon system, because I know why it's there. Like, it's there for a reason. And it's there because people need it to go on. Like, they
Mm-hmm. Well, it is hard for me to imagine anyone, I guess, like, I would say in this day and age anyway, sort of surviving the onslaught of imperial media and not falling under the spell of whatever we consider to be like the opposite of agape, just the typical egoic, self-interested sort of perspective. I mean, at some point, like, every 14-year-old becomes kind of like a materialist and selfish, and they fall under the spell of all that stuff. And then, like, I mean, I don't know, like, have you had luck in, because I've had, like, I had, you got to be careful talking about this stuff, but, like, one or two kind of mystical experiences where I was part of the one and there was no self, and, like, it's ineffable, right? You can't really explain this amazing feeling, or this, it's not even a feel, it's just kind of like an experience. But I mean, I remember the first time that happened to me, and I was like, okay, like, I have crossed a bridge that I cannot go back over. Like, I am now in another universe, in a sense. And I haven't gone a day without thinking of that since 2007. And there's a part of me that, like, became a missionary that day. It's like, I want to tell people about this, but it's not that easy. You can't just, like, show it to them. And I've had very little luck, I think, as far as I know anyway, in provoking people to similar kinds of transformative experiences of assurance about, God or the truth or the agape of the universe, or however we say it.
Yeah, you can't do it. Like it's the classic line of like man labors in the field, but God provides the harvest, which is in the Bible somewhere.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of Calvinist in that sense, I guess. Like, or souls have to be sort of pre-tilled. I mean, you might show up and accidentally trigger them into it, but probably not by yelling at them like, have you read Jonathan Edwards' essay on the divine and supernatural light? Let me explain it to you. Like, that's not probably going to do it for people.
Yeah, it doesn't. That's a hard one. It's very difficult. Like, this is why all mission efforts fail unless they're by the sword, because the only way you can get people to care is if you translate it to their material well-being now. Like, well, do it or you'll be killed or you'll lose your livelihood. Yeah. People are like, oh, okay, fine. Then they'll drop Zeus or whatever they were worshiping before, and they'll go along with it. And I don't know if in the long run that's good or bad. It's not the best way to do anything for sure. But you can't. Well, it's the problem of feedback, really. It's like you were talking about earlier. Like the thing of deconstruction was that there's no more grand narratives, but that was itself a grand narrative. Yeah. And you always hit that problem. Like, I have a thing and I want to tell people about this thing that's inevitable, but yet I want to tell them about it. Right? It's something that can't be spoken of. Right. And yet I need to. You always hit this feedback loop when you come upon these big problems. In fact, I think that is the self-referential infinite loop is basically the philosophical problem. Like what you run into in programming, like where it references itself and just runs and runs and runs. I think that is every philosophical problem I can think of eventually spirals into that at some point. And so, like, it's like Lao Tzu said, the actual Tao cannot be spoken of, and yet he wrote that, right?
Right. So, yeah. That's the best. That first verse of the Tao Te Ching. Yeah. Where, like, the story of how I think he was in jail or something, and they said, you got to write down your wisdom before we let you go, and he was like, I can't write down my wisdom, and they were like, well, then we're not letting you go. And then finally he wrote it down to say basically, like, yeah, I can't, whatever I write here won't be about the Tao, the wisdom, but it is frustrating still. It's like, I'm the whole thing about the way that it kind of alienates friends and family if you ask too many questions, it has been sometimes frustrating for me, because it's like they'll go, the most effective CIA psyop of all time is the one where they developed the term conspiracy theory. Now if I mention anything like that, I get my dad saying to me, like, you're a conspiracy theorist now. And it's like, what does that even mean? Like, there are demonstrable, you can read Sallust's account of the Catalan conspiracy 2,000 years ago. Like, these clearly have happened before, or like, it's even in the New Testament. There was a conspiracy to kill Paul. It says, I think somewhere in Acts.
There was a conspiracy to kill Jesus.
It's a conspiracy. Yeah, so sure. Like, this is not an unusual phenomenon, but now all of a sudden we are like kind of categorized, I guess, in the same sense that we were talking about earlier, to where, like, if you kind of question the shape of the narrative, and you kind of ask about another layer, it becomes like I can't really give the example here because it's related to livelihood stuff, but I have had conversations with people where it's like, I have to introduce the topic so carefully. Like, I have to say, I know this is going to sound a little paranoid, but I was doing it. You know what I mean? Like, you have to really butter them up, and then you can kind of you can go, is it possible that there was a financial motive involved here that makes the ethical behavior questionable? And then they all kind of just like, it's amazing. It's like, no matter how carefully you articulate it and lay the groundwork and remain calm, like, you're not the guy on the street corner. If you do it all just right, sometimes they'll just, it's almost as if nothing happened. They kind of just blink. And it's like their programming is you're invisible, if you so then
Yep.
yeah, and then all you want to do is just holler at them, the facts that you read on Poll or 4chan or whatever.
Right, bang the earth is round. I know all these facts.
Yeah, and that's not as effective either, although it's fun. And that's like, again, that's why I always return to like this podcast, because it's such a relief when you hear somebody just say like, Elon Musk is a Hollywood actor. Like, let's get real here. This is fake.
Oh, yeah, he's just, I don't trust him as far as I could throw him. But you can't do that. But here's the thing: the answer to that is also agape. It's unconditional love. Like, love all of those people anyway, even though they're completely.
Oh yeah.
And then you begin to see like, oh, okay, but this is just what they need right now. One day, when the timing is right, perhaps they will snap out of it. And if they do, great. And if not, that's also okay. Maybe they just need a little longer than one life. Maybe a purgatory or something to figure it out. It's okay. They're going to be, Yeah,
that's mature. That's like wisdom you're talking, brother. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, just because it is a struggle. Like I've seen a lot of people get involved in like, what do you call it? Sort of truth movements or just like they just subscribe to the conspiracy subreddit, and it starts to crimp their brains a little bit. And you have to say, look, not everybody subscribed to that subreddit. So, take it like that.
Yeah. And not every conspiracy theory is true either. I mean, there's some I'm sure I believe in that probably aren't real if I knew all the facts. But a lot of them are. A lot of them are not. Most things are not what they seem. So you don't have to worry about convincing, like the idea that you're going to wake someone up, which is this was the thing that the conspiracy theorists, like Bill Cooper, hold a pale horse, right? We got to know, everyone's got to know. And then once everybody knows, then sunlight is the best disinfectant. Then all the evil will stop.
Yeah.
But that isn't how it actually works. We tried that. That doesn't take. You can have all the facts you want. You can have all of the data you want. You can have all the citations you want. It does not matter. And it's actually good that it doesn't matter, because if people woke up to that, like imagine, here's a thought experiment. Imagine you're a woman and you're 37 and you've had an abortion. You divorced your husband at some point. Your kids are sort of between households. You don't have a good relationship with your mother. You don't call her. You have had one-night stands with several men and left a trail of broken hearts around you. Okay, imagine if that woman woke up all of a sudden to all of the suffering she had caused in her life. She would have to, there'd be no chance to save her. She would be dead. Right? And so the more people...
Yeah, it'd be too much.
It'd be too much. And so she needs a series of illusions to protect her from what she has done, from the guilt and shame of what she has done. And that's a gift from God, really, that ability to hide from it. Like the ability to shield yourself in the rocks from the passing as God passes by so it doesn't kill you, is like he did with Moses, is a gift. And that doesn't mean that she's a lost cause. It doesn't mean that you give up on her or stop loving. It just means that like you can't rip away the coverings that she has to protect herself, because she's not ready for that yet. And you just pray for her. You try to love her, and you be there for her when she needs it, because you can't run, all the coverings in the world will not keep it from you completely. And it will sting her, and you will help her deal with that over, it may take her whole life. It may, maybe not, but you can't just rip those things away, because that's why they don't like conspiracy theorists, because you begin to tell them like imagine this is why the WMD thing never really made a splash, even though it's objectively true, because like we went there and bombed and killed a whole bunch of people, a lot of them civilians, wrecked lives over what was objectively a lie. And so now you're going to go tell a veteran that he went and killed a bunch of people over nothing. He's basically a murderer, and he can't handle that. And so if he doesn't want to hear that, then that's fine. It would kill him. That's why they say like you're doing violence to me by these words. What they mean is you're reminding me of my own evil. Please stop or I will die. And you have to respect that, because it's ultimately not your job to bring people to repentance. It's your job to be there for them as God brings them that way.
Yeah. To me, that's especially profound in thinking about raising children. Like I've got children who are almost approaching the teen years. And it's like, I think when I was a few years ago, I was thinking like I can protect them from the world.
Yeah.
But there comes a point where it's like you realize they are going to make these mistakes. They are going to, they're going to do the damage to other people. They're going to participate in the big disaster. And so then all you can do is kind of hope. It's like, it reminds me of the Odyssey. I always think about that idea of kind of like the 20-year journey away from home and all the difficulties and stuff that you have to face in order to return to Ithaca, which is the coming back to, basically what we're talking about, this idea of like reunification where you get to the agape again. And so you just hope that like, I hope my children will, I'm sure they'll go through a stupid new atheist phase, and maybe they'll even be degenerates for a while and do awful things. But like, hopefully God will pull them out the other end of the tunnel. And like, it's frustrating that that's sort of out of my power. And I struggle to like, kind of come to terms with that, or like be at peace with that model, because it's, it requires faith. It's scary,
It is. The thing that is within your power, though, is that you can never, ever let go. Right? The people you love, you just hold on to them forever, no matter what they do to you or to other people. It's just like, you never let go. And then if you never let go, there is always hope. And eventually it will be rectified. People lose other people even through death, really. Like, you don't let go of them even through death. And as long as you are holding on to them, then they will eventually come back, even if it's very painful. It takes a long time.
That is awesome.
Yeah, and it's extremely painful, because as you're holding on, you're having to watch them hurt themselves and hurt you, and like you want to let go just to make the pain stop. And like, well, I get it, but you that's why the whole idea of carrying your cross, like, well, you just have to, if you actually love, like, that's why God couldn't let go, because God is unconditional love. So he had to go to the farthest extremes of suffering to bring in his attempts to hold on to us. Right. And that is why that model, that's the only way to actually be victorious over the world, is to it's the agape. You never, ever let go. You love forever, no matter what. Right. And that's the only way you can do anything. That's the only path to, and it's very, very painful. Like, it's much easier to write someone off, write off a relationship, write off someone that you used to know, write off a family member or whatever, when it gets too hard, or when they don't like you. Or
this is like, to me, this is the art of friendship too. It's rare. It's rarer, I think, probably. Maybe it's just the older I get, but it also seems like civilization is kind of struggling with this now, based on, friends breaking up over voting or something as trivial as that, where it's like, I mean, I am still in touch with my best friend from 6th grade, and it brings joy to my heart to say that, because it's like we can text each other and remember the vibe from 1993 and pick each other up And like he thinks all kinds of different things than I think, and he doesn't approve of the things that I think about things. But like beyond that, we just decided we're going to be friends until we die, and that kind of like, I guess it's loyalty is also agape, and it's like you can't have human being without that at some level. But yeah, it's a shame how rare it is.
Well, it's rare because it's like so difficult. It's like saying it's a shame how rare it is to run ultra marathons. Like it's just
yeah, you're right. You're right.
It's so hard, and so you also have to have compassion for yourself for the times when you fail. But yeah.
Well, man, what a great talk. I don't mean to keep you up late. I know it's the end of a long week for you.
Yeah, no, that's okay, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm going to tell all of my listeners to just go and listen and join. We should have had maybe next time we can have a struggle session over why I haven't signed up for Gumroad yet.
Well, to be fair, I haven't put any new content up on Gumroad in a while.
Yeah, but speaking of
as failures, I've told people, it's just our version of Patreon. Don't expect anything. Just sign up if you would want to support us. Sometimes you'll get stuff. Sometimes you won't. Most of the time you won't. But you're doing it because, like, hey, that's nice.
Yeah. If karma is real, you guys, you got a windfall coming.
One can hope. One can hope.
Yep.
But anyway, yeah, thank you again for coming on. It was great.
All right, man. Absolutely my honor. Talk to you again.
All right. Thank you, sir.
See ya.
Targets up here, we just had something go right over the top of us that, I hate to say this, looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast and went right over the top of us.